fantastic. This is GT Racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got everything outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson! Anderson's up top!
Oh my god! Oh! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go!
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Welcome to Sebring International Raceway, where we have a championship decider on our hands here in the Geodesic GoPro Championship. The final round and the titles for GTLM and GTD will be decided here. One driver in each category will walk away from this round with the grand prize, a GoPro Hero 7 Black with an action kit, one each for each division champion. Other prizes on the line as well. A $50 prize for the round winner as well, brought to you by AltShiftSupply.com. Many exciting battles to be decided here at 90 minutes of racing in the Geodesic GoPro Championship. I'm David Haynes, and producing and joining alongside me is going to be Jay Kennedy. Jay, 2 classes of GT racing, 90 minutes of racing ahead of us. It's going to be exciting, and the end will tell us who our season champions are.
Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome once again to what has been one of the most thoroughly enjoyable series we've ever had here on SimSpeed TV. 2 classes that are both coming down to the wire. It's essentially winner takes all in GTLM and GTD. It's all but sealed for Brian Lockwood if he can get a podium position. Of course, it depends on penalties, but this is going to be a really interesting one. But qualifying at the moment is underway. It's already been completed for GTLM, and that's provided a little bit of a mix with Harris and Meyer being pretty close. But GTD at the moment, that's a curveball because Lockwood is nowhere near the front at the moment, and he has been so consistent in the races he's been able to participate in, being at the front of the field.
Yeah, but it's still crazy close right now in GTD. I mean, sure, his teammate in John Miller has 3/10 or so over second place, but then from second down to 5th there was nothing separating in GTD, and Brian Lockwood has just gone second, just a couple hundredths of a second behind his teammate as well. So he's finally found a bit more pace in the Racecraft Esports Mercedes.
Yeah, just gone very close to that pole time. He's going to have another run at the second lap, but we'll go to those pole laps soon. But we might have a look at the championship standings because, as we said, the GTLM championship, wowee, this is really tight.
Yeah, precisely. 6 points separating Robert L. Harris from Tyson Meyer at the very top of the table there. 50 points for the win, 40 points for second, means that with a difference of less than 10 points between the two of them, whoever takes the win will take the championship. And basically, whoever finishes ahead of the other will be the winner of the inaugural Geodesic GoPro Championship in the GTLM division.
Yeah, exactly, and look at that fight for the next few spots as well. The 3rd place at the moment, the last podium spot in the championship, is tied with Avatal and Clement also in it with a shot as well. So, or even Oliveira's in there as well. So, this is going to be a really tight championship all the way to the end. Unfortunately, Justin Rem can't be here tonight to try and get that championship or move up from that 8th position in the championship. So, be a little bit disappointed that he can't be here, but the rest of that championship fight is so intensely close.
Yeah, indeed, and especially when you see a tie there for 3rd place, and they can't take the same number of points each away from this round, so this round will break that tie. One of Andrew Caron or Enzo Johansson will finish ahead of the other, and of course, Simon Avatal can have a good race, and he is also in and amongst it as well. So GTLM, everyone in this race, I think, has something to fight for.
Yeah, 100%. And this is the pole lap here for Robert Harris. It's a 1:54.5. He's actually taken pole by 7/10 in the end. Practice times were a lot closer between the two of Harris and Meyer. It was only 100th of a second separating them in practice, but for qualifying, Robert L. Harris has been able to find something very special in that Team Tortuga car.
Yeah, and 3.7 miles is the length of this bumpy Sebring circuit, and the Porsche, well, he had some troubles eating up the bumps of the sausage curbs last round with Robert L. Harris, but around here and in qualifying trim, that Porsche looks very stable indeed and just turns in well to the hairpin turn there. And Robert L. Harris, well, he has a championship to fight for here, and he's fired the first shot in qualifying here to get pole position, so that's going to be very important. He needs to follow through with that.
And it's going to be really interesting to see how strategy plays out in this race too, because we know that pitting at the right time is just as key as anything else, because you've got to manage that traffic. We saw last round that traffic was a big key in who finished where and the positions in that midfield. So we'll see how that plays out tonight too, but this lap looks so smooth from Harris.
Yeah, a masterclass in how to take some of these turns, and not all of them are particularly easy, and especially come through the mob bend here, and that is one where you got to get all of the curb on the inside. You can't go too wide out on the outside there because the grass is right there, and it's a section of corners where you're turning to the right and then turning to the left and then turning to the right, and it can either upset the car or you might not have enough front grip to leave through the change of direction. Robert L. Harris, the car looks set up on a dime there, and it looks like it follows the way that he points the steering wheel, but he can still trust the rear end of the car to stick. That's a perfectly handling car, not understeering, not oversteering. And that is how you set a pole position time of 1 minute 54.597.
Yeah, brilliant lap there, and good finish to the lap there with a nice little loop around, but a very, very clean lap. We'll go next to the GTD Championship. Brian Lockwood, as we said, was leading that championship. Only 13 points ahead. Podium position today will be enough. He's actually been dropped back because John Miller's taken pole on that very, very last lap, which is a little bit of a curveball. So it's really down to the three. If Lockwood finishes in fourth, one of those other two could take that championship.
Yeah, as we say, 50 points up for grabs, and so anyone in the top three there, a mathematical chance. Ferris Stanley won last round, so he's on a pretty good round of form. We'll see what the Audi can do at Sebring. Maybe the Mercedes is slightly favoured here. We'll definitely see during the race, but the difference of the manufacturers there, the Audi was clearly very strong and good at looking after its tyres at Imola. The Mercedes might have something around here at Sebring. Brian Lockwood and John Miller, two teammates there with Racecraft Esports, and so whatever the result of this race, they'll have two drivers in the top three at the end of the standings, and that's something to be proud of, but they would desperately like to take away this inaugural championship.
And it looks like it's going to be a very, very prestigious one as well, because I know there's already plans for Season 2 underway, which is pretty cool. It's been a very, very hard-fought championship as well, as we get this pole lap from John Miller, a 157.7, to steal it away at the very, very last second, to steal that pole away, which is an awesome effort to steal it right at the closing stages of qualifying. That's extra pressure going on, and he's done a great job to get that lap in.
Exactly, so we're right on board now with that Mercedes, and looking at the lines that he takes and how he's managed to extract the speed for a single qualifying lap. And one thing to note is the track temperatures that we've seen so far, quite a lot cooler than we had last round out at Imola, where we were worrying a lot about tyre wear and things like that. It'll still be a concern, but I think a lot more grip available from the weather, but the surface changes almost with every corner around here at Sebring. Some it's a bit of pavement, some it's old concrete runways and taxiways, and the grip, the balance of the car can really change from corner to corner and from sector to sector around Sebring.
Exactly, the grip around this track, of course, being concrete and all different surfaces, is huge, and making sure that you've got your tyre pressures right and understand the car behaviour is really, really important. And the track here, I think, is probably the most neutral track for all the different manufacturers here too, so that should make for a really, really close show. The top three in GTLM, all three manufacturers we have, top two, Merkin and Audi, separated by 10, so we're going to see some real close racing between all of the brands out there tonight.
Yeah, indeed we will. This is the one last corner for John Miller on his qualifying lap as we watch how he got pole position, and Sunset Bend, I mean, he's looking right at the sun there that time, and takes sort of the middle apex and then also a late apex as well, trying to get the throttle open early. We say it every time, corner of 1,000 lines. There's a whole raft of different ways to try and find speed through there, and John Miller has clearly found one of them.
We go lastly to the Gentlemen's Championship, and again, John Miller is leading that one at the moment. He's a fair way in front and will likely seal that championship if he has a decent run tonight. If he does have a couple of incidents, there is a chance for Simon Avatel, but the way it looks at the moment, he has got that championship all sealed. So we're about 2.5 minutes away from getting to the green flag for the final time in this championship. It's amazing to think that we're at the end of this championship already. It's gone by so fast, only 8 rounds, but it's been an incredible championship that we've had here with Geodesic GoPro.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they've hit the nail on the head with the format in this one as well. 90-minute races for the GT cars gives us just enough time for the guys to really race it out, have a little bit of strategy, need to be able to conserve their tyres, not an out-and-out sprint race, but it does get that spirit of a little bit of endurance racing, of sports car racing like you might expect, and compresses its essence down into what's a pretty snappy broadcast, pretty snappy event. I think we get everything you love about the longer form endurance races in a slightly shorter burst.
Yeah, it's a perfect length race because it still provides endurance style strategy in a sprint race format. So we get the sprint race strategy, we get the endurance strategy all in one. So I'm really loving this length of race. The 90-minute race I think is really, really perfect for these cars. We've seen it in other series as well that run these style of races. The 90-minute races are so cool to watch because they just offer so much extra.
Especially, it leads to some of the organic strategy as well in a 90-minute race where they don't have to limit the fuel tank size of any of the cars. 90 minutes is enough that everyone has to make a pit stop for fuel, but it's never a full tank. And with the way the pit service is done on both the GTLM and the GTD cars, everyone's typically taking fuel and not tyres. So the way that the drivers use their tyres, look after them, set up the car to wear down the tyres or not, a lot of that can come into play later in the race. And I think we saw that at Imola, where there were some guys who were really quick in the first 45 minutes of the race that couldn't keep that full head of steam up through the whole 90 minutes. Just maybe the tyres got away from them in the hotter conditions. And then some other drivers we saw, especially some driving the Audis, that weren't blazingly quick immediately in the start of the race, but then deeper in the race, had the balance underneath them, car came towards them, and they suddenly found themselves with some fantastic race pace. So the 90 minutes is long enough to give us some of that as well.
Yeah, exactly right. The 90 minutes is perfect for that sort of thing too. And also, it gives some merit to real fuel saving as well during that first stint because you can cut yourself 1 or 2 laps shorter in regards to pitting. If you can tuck in behind someone and save a big chunk of fuel, which these big long straights here at Sebring do offer, there's 3 really, really good fuel saving opportunities if you can be close enough. 3 good drafting positions where you can save fuel. This track really does enable you to be able to do it. The track conditions on screen though, fairly cool. So we're not going to see those huge heated tyres like we saw last round at Imola, but that wind is moving around quite a lot. Its speed is changing a fairly big amount, but for the most part it's fairly low, but there are some really, really big gusts of wind.
Yeah, that could be interesting, and certainly if you've got a headwind heading down any of the straights, then the draft and the slipstream becomes that much more valuable. So if it continues to move around, if there's some gusts, it could lead to some not only a bit of unpredictability through some of the corners, but it might help someone get a pass done.
Exactly right. There is that as well. It does open up extra passing opportunities. Of course, with the way the straights work, there's definitely going to be one of those straights will be a tailwind and a headwind. So just opens up so many more possibilities. And as we said too, 90-minute race. There is live race control as well, which has been really, really cool to have throughout the series. The race control has been absolutely fantastic throughout this championship as well because they've been so quick to make correct decisions. And if they're not able to make a decision quickly, they'll do it post-race, and they've posted those post-race penalties very, very quickly as well. So a huge thumbs up and well done to the guys from Geodesic for doing race control throughout this championship. How good has it been, considering this is their first go at it too? It's been a phenomenal championship the whole way through.
Yeah, I don't think we've had any real clangers of any particular decisions, and they've been pretty rapid with it typically as well. Just counting down the last minute before the cars will form up on the grid and take the parade lap, the formation lap. And it's a full formation lap around here at Sebring too. And we talked about the track temperature, but we did not quite touch on the time of day. In the session, it's 6:37 p.m. In the evening. We saw for some of the qualifying laps heading towards Sunset Bend, it was living up to its name. The sun was right in the driver's eyes. I think the track temperature will continue to drop away during this race. It might even be quite dark by the end. All the cars are equipped with headlights, but this might be one of those races where not only does the track temperature change, but also the lighting, and that can affect what braking markers particularly you're looking at. It affects how bright the headlights are in your mirrors, all of those kind of things.
And also a big factor as well if you haven't practiced those sort of things too. If you've been practicing with a different time of day, or only been practicing while the sun's up and haven't practiced while it's right down to sunset, is really key. And of course with the new updates too to the sun as well, that sunlight in your eyes heading into Sunset Bend, which is why it's called Sunset Bend, will be very, very tough for some of the drivers too as we get to the starting grid.
Indeed, so the car's forming up on the grid, and this is what the order is going to be. Your pole position in GTLM, Robert L. Harris, and alongside him, his title rival, Tyson Meyer. That's going to be spicy all race long. It might be very interesting into turn 1 as well. But second row is Andrew Caron and Simon Avatal. Row 3, Dominic Oliveira and Trevor Clement. And that is your 6 GTLM runners. The next row is the start of our GTD cars. John Miller on pole position there, with last round's winner Ferris Stanley alongside him. That's functionally row 1 for GTD. Behind that, championship leader. He's won every single race that he has attended. Just unfortunately hasn't been able to attend them all, but he's here and in contention for the finale. Brian Lockwood and Jesper Drilliker have that row alongside there. Behind them, Victor Tanaka and Zach Plummer, who had a pretty good show for Action Sim Sport. I think his best result last round as well. So that Audi, they're maybe coming on song with that, despite some of the balance of performance changes. 13th place is David Browning. Hayden Gober in 14th in the lineup, directly behind his teammate. And then the last row of the grid is Jack Anderek, and Older Stepanovsky did not set a time, but might still be allowed to take the start of the race. We'll see what happens there, Jay.
Yeah, exactly. Fingers crossed he can take to the start. It looks like he's might have actually been having some tech issues, so he doesn't look like he's been able to take to the grid yet at this stage. But we are getting ready to get underway for this finale. The iRacing safety car, the pace car, pulls away, and we get ready to get the green flag for one last time in this championship. And this is a little bit of a bittersweet moment. I've thoroughly enjoyed this championship. Have a look at that sunlight there. This championship has been phenomenal. It's our first American time zone championship, and I can't wait to do more because it's just been so much fun. Of course, it's the middle of the day here, a Friday morning for us in Australia, but the racing has meant that we haven't had to stress about getting up early or anything like that, because it's just been action-packed, phenomenally fun, and a thoroughly enjoyable and entertaining championship.
Yeah, not a bad way to start your Friday for us, honestly, but also it's introduced us to a couple of other names that we don't see in some of the Australian time zone things. It gives us a more of a perspective, a thicker slice of the sim racing pie, and I do enjoy that.
Definitely, it's been really, really good to have extra names and extra people involved in something that we cover, and it's been great to be a part of the crew with Geodesic as well. It's been great for them to have offered us the opportunity to be a part of this championship. We've thoroughly enjoyed being a part of it, so thank you, Geodesic, for all your help and support of us for this championship and asking us to be a part of it. We've been honoured to be a part of it, and can't wait for whatever comes next after this one, but we've still got 90 minutes of racing to go, and I cannot wait for the green flag to fly.
Yeah, exactly. On the pace lap right now, about half of the way around the lap, and how good do the headlights and all of these cars look in these sunset conditions? Watching Tyson Meyer, and of course, these guys going along behind the safety car are burning fuel right now. So if you can save fuel on this pace lap, on this formation lap, then that's as good as saving fuel during the race, because we are in the race now. We just don't get green flag until we see the start-finish line this time around. So saving fuel now can be very, very important to how many laps you can go on a tank of fuel and how much time it's going to cost you in the pit lane when your pit stop does come around. Cutting 2 seconds out of that pit stop time has meant the difference between winning or losing in both of our categories during some of the races this season.
100%, and as we've said so many times, it's easier to pass a car in the pits than it is on track, especially a track like this, which you can sometimes get a move done, but there's so many opportunities to go over under. If you try and make a move at Le Mans, you open yourself for an opportunity at Sunset Bend. Sunset Bend, there's so many lines that you can run 3 wide and still hold the position. So it's such a difficult track to pass on, but it just offers such close, tight racing, which is awesome. And what this championship has had, we've only got 6 cars in our GTLM class, but I think last round we had 7, and that was one of the best races we've had. And the GTD cars, we've had around 10 most rounds, and I must honestly say that that's been the class of the entire field. It's been so phenomenal to watch. So having these smaller fields in these 90-minute races has not been a bad thing at all.
Exactly. Through the final corner, they dropped just a little bit behind the safety car for 90 minutes at Sebring International Raceway to crown a champion in the Geodesic GoPro Championship. Let's go racing. And Robert L. Harris gets a good jump in front of Tyson Meyer. Behind that, Simon Avatal and Andrew Caron going to fight it out into turn 1. Harris can take the full racing line, sweep all the way through. The drivers behind fighting. Big wiggle for Caron. Avatal runs wide. He goes all the way to the back of the field. Trevor Clement comes on through, but Robert Harris through cleanly. Dominic Oliveira barges his way up the inside. GTD cars are away and racing. Brian Lockwood has gone from 3rd up into 2nd. The Racecraft Esports cars, Linus Stern, Jesper Drilica, Ferris Stanley side by side through turn 2. Around the outside, big slide, and he can't hold on to it. Jesper Drilica is going to fall to the back of the GTD field. Very lucky he didn't get collected there, Jay.
Great driving from everyone else to realise what was going on ahead and to avoid him. But that's unfortunate. We'll quickly get a Building Optimization Systems replay. Big thanks to Building Optimization Systems for their support of this championship, as well as GoPro as well. But yeah, just cold tyres there. I think that's all it was for Drilica. Just a little bit of cold tyres. Wasn't able to hold on. So we come back live. Tanaka trying to get the move done on Ferris Stanley. What a horrible start for Stanley. He's lost a spot and may lose another as they're side-by-side, Tanaka and Stanley.
Yeah, if Tanaka gets through, it'll be Racecraft Esports cars 1, 2, 3. But Ferris Stanley is not going to back out of this one. He knows what he's fighting for. Grabs plenty of the curb through Tower Corner, but squeezed down to the inside. He couldn't get the momentum. Tanaka now going to slot into 3rd place. And a lightning jump he's had. He's missed a couple of rounds as well, unfortunately, but he's here in the finale and putting on a good show, supporting his 2 teammates who are in the battle for this championship. And this is critical. Him getting in front of Ferris Stanley. This takes points away from Stanley. As things stand right now, John Miller, I think it stands right now, Lockwood would be the champion.
Yep, Lockwood would win, but Miller would get 2nd. So it is on, and we do know that these guys are going to race. So even though they're teammates in the same colour car, same design, they are going to race as if they are not teammates, which is what we love in these sort of races. And Miller, great jump, but Brian Lockwood has got a great start as well. So these guys are going to go at it as Ferris Stanley trying to come back. He may actually have thought, maybe I'll just tuck him behind and save a bit of fuel from these guys and undercut the 3 of them in the pit stop. That could be a possibility, but we've seen in these races that getting away early and getting a bit of a buffer is, have a look at that, Stanley so much quicker through the mid-corner. Had to get on the brakes again from Victor Tanaka. This is going to be an impressive fight, an impressive battle. Ferris Stanley wants to get back up there. You can tell straight away.
Yeah, one of the big differences between the Mercedes and the Audi is not just the front-engine Mercedes, mid-engine Audi, but the big V8's pretty torquey on the Mercedes, gets out of the corners well, but the balance for the Audi maybe just helps a little bit under brakes, a bit through the mid-corner. We look to the GTLM battle, and this is 3rd and 4th place. Dominic Oliveira, Andrew Caron. And Caron, he had that big wiggle through turn 1 on the start, lost a couple of spots, lost 1 spot. He's trying to get that one back off Dominic Oliveira.
Yeah, and Dominic as well, up 2 spots from where he started 5th. He's already in the 3rd, and he could just be acting as a little bit of a rear gunner now to make sure that Caron doesn't get involved in the battle for the championship win. That is what he might be trying to do there now, just trying to hold back, because those front 2 have already broken out to a big 1.5 second advantage. Harris and Meyer separated by about 0.8 of a second. So Tyson Meyer at the moment will be in the draft, and I don't think he'll be too upset with where he's sitting at the moment, because that is a good spot. But have a look at that sunlight. That is tough to find your braking marker in that light.
It's tough to find your braking marker for Sunset Bend at just about any time.
Is
It's
there a
such
right
long,
braking
long-
marker?
People have look, the Holy Grail would be easy to find than the perfect braking marker or line through Sunset Bend. Trevor Clement certainly hasn't found it either, though, unfortunately.
I think he might have found the braking marker, but he just didn't quite get the exit part right. It's just a little slide through the mid-corner. Just that bump in the middle of the corner, and already had the slide going. The second bump's unsettled the car a little bit more. He's dropped all the way back to the last place in that class. He's about 5 seconds back now, but it's on for the race lead in GTD. And it is also on for third and fourth. It's also on back in the field for sixth and seventh and eighth. So we're going to have some great battles in GTD. As we saw last round, the first 85 minutes had some amazing battles. And then it all settled down in the last 5 minutes, and it swapped with GTLM having that huge battle in the last 5 minutes. So I think we're going to see the same again today.
Yeah, it's really good to see some of this close racing here. Sebring, you know, it has some long straights, but it's not a massively draft-dependent track like Daytona or Monza or some others like that. So it's good to see these cars still all close together. And Brian Lockwood, he's not right up against the rear wing of his teammate in front, but he's there and thereabouts, and he's not going to let him get away. What's interesting to see is that Victor Tanaka is still staying with these guys as well. I mean, he wants to run his own race, I'm sure, and running pretty quickly right now, but if he just backed up Ferris Stanley 2 or 3 seconds, that would greatly suit his two teammates in front. I don't think they're quite successful or capable of giving that instruction to Victor Tanaka at this point, and he's racing for all his worth as well.
Well, he's not only racing for his worth, he's got a very, very big fighter tucked in behind him from Ferris Stanley. So great to see Ferris coming out too. I know it's really, really early for him to be out there racing, so it's great to have him out on track, our only driver from the Asian region in this series. So great to have him as part of this championship as well. We've got drivers from all over the world as part of this championship too. We've got Americans, we've got Australians who have been a part of it. Of course, as we said, Asian drivers. I'm 99% sure he's from Indonesia, am I right?
I believe that's what we heard, or he told
so.
us.
Yeah, I think that was what we heard. But either way, we've got drivers from everywhere. We've got European drivers that are a part of it too. So the next one, make sure you do be a part of it, because it is an awesome championship, and just waiting to see what's going to happen for the next one. But I know whatever it's going to be is going to be absolutely impressive. Look at that huge slide there from Brian Lockwood with getting the two wheels in the dirt at the exit of turn one. Very, very easy to run a little bit wide there. And if you run more than half a wheel offline, can actually loop you around, as Andrew Caron's had a moment at the hairpin.
Yeah, that car was looking a little bit oversteery on that one we saw. He's lost just one spot out of that one. Building Optimization Systems Replay, who've been with us this entire championship, we see from his perspective, he's just getting a little bit too hot. Yeah, the moment he turns into the corner, the rear gives way. I thought maybe he'd have a wheel on the grass or something, but that didn't look like the case. Just looks like maybe the brake bias was set a little bit too far to the back. When he's turned it in, there's just not enough grip at the rear. It sent him around, and he's caught it, kept it off the barrier. But yeah, put Andrew Caron back to 5th place, and he's lost 2 since the start. But up the pointy end of GTLM, Tyson Meyer not letting Robert L. Harris get away in the slightest. Harris has had a pretty poor run out of Le Mans that time. He's all the way to the right-hand side of the circuit. Meyer is as close as he has been. You see underneath 0.3 of a second. Probably not close enough for a lunge into Sunset Bend, but he's certainly making Harris worried.
Well, you can see he's already applying pressure, because Harris doesn't look as smooth and consistent as he had in other weeks. He's looked so much more composed, but right now...
He was on rails in qualifying, remember? And here, he just doesn't look like it.
I'm wondering if he hasn't quite tweaked the car from qualifying spec to race spec, because it just doesn't look as smooth, consistent as you said, on rails as it did in qualifying. So it's very, very possible that he hasn't got the car set up perfect for race spec. And it just doesn't look like it's settling right when he's bouncing it over the curbs either. It just... something doesn't look right. That last lap he only lost a 10th, but it's enough for Meyer now to be well and truly in the draft and applying a big chunk of pressure. This is the closest fight in this class. Tanaka and Stanley are still close, the same gap that they've had. So we'll stay with this for now, because Harris doesn't look anywhere near as composed as I was expecting him to be.
You know, some of that could be down to the fuel tank placement. In the Ferrari, for example, the fuel cell is just behind the driver, pretty centrally located in the car. You fill that up with a full tank of fuel after qualifying. Sure, the car's heavier, but the center of gravity doesn't shift particularly far. But in the Porsche 911 RSR, that fuel tank, that fuel cell is pretty much over the front axle. It's in front of the driver. So you go from maybe 15 liters in qualifying to 100 or some in the race spec. That might move the balance of the car quite significantly. Speaking of balance of the car, Jesper Drilica has just had none since the start of this race, since lap 1. His second time we've seen him spin in that corner.
And he's actually decided to bring it into the pit. So I think he might have got something really, really wrong with car balance and car setup. And he's just decided it's too hard to go at. Oh, another car around. No way. Dominic Olivier around. And that's at Le Mans. So strange spot to be around. How's that happen? I think he might have just continued to turn left as he's gone to run that extra line run off the circuit where you can run over the line. We just missed it there on that replay. We'll go back a little bit further and see if we can pick it up. But that's a strange spot to be. You don't often see cars out there.
He was pretty clear and away in third position. And yeah, he's just beached the thing a little bit on the curb before Le Mans. And he's been trying to turn aggressively. That's just sent and spun him around. Too aggressive with the curbs. That's what it looks like. Simon Avatal has gotten in front of him, and partially because Olivier was very generous in his rejoin, which is sporting.
And how's that? Remember turn 1, lap 1? He was out off in the grass and dropped to last in class, so he's gone from last to third in only 9.5 minutes of racing, essentially. So he's done a really, really good job. As we're on board back with Ferris Stanley, the gap at the front between Harris and Meyer is stretched out a tiny little bit. It's not enough for it to be an intense battle. These two guys are actually closing back in on the leaders too, so this is going to be a really interesting battle between 3 of these guys are the championship contenders.
Yeah, exactly. And that'll reassure Ferris Stanley that the two in front aren't galloping away. Sure, he's trying to fight with Victor Tanaka, trying to get past here, but he's not losing any time to the lead of the race, and might even get the throttle down a little bit earlier out of the hairpin there. He's right up underneath Tanaka, but just hasn't been able to find a place to outbrake, and maybe just hasn't had much of an advantage in a straight line. He's still right there, and Tanaka defends a little harder than we've had to see him do yet. He's starting to feel that pressure, no doubt. You can see it.
100%, you can see the pressure now. Stanley looks so much more composed, doesn't he? He just looks like he's got the car placed in a much better spot. He's using all of the road, and Tanaka's just starting to use a defensive line, and he runs a little bit wide. Tiny little mistake, but there's no way through here for Ferris Stanley. He can't run too wide through this section. If he's close enough, he might be able to throw a dive by him. He does! Good move. Is he going to be able to finish it? They're going to stay side by side. And great job there from Ferris Stanley. He's going to get the spot. Oh, a little bit of contact. Wheel-to-wheel contact there. And oh! Zach Plummer just avoided contact there with Victor Tanaka.
Yeah, big evasive action from Plummer. Victor Tanaka gets it rolling again. He's lost a couple spots there, and a very interesting overtaking opportunity there. Not one we often see. Ferris Stanley dove it down in there. Victor Tanaka was not going to give it up. And then side by side through Le Mans, they just get a little too close. The tiniest bit of contact there is all it took for Tanaka to go around, and there was millimeters between Plummer and Tanaka there. These guys have got their reaction times perfect tonight, because there's been a couple of opportunities that there's been a spun car I thought was going to get hit, and the drivers behind have had their wits about them.
100%. They're all doing a very, very good job. It's been the best thing about this championship. I think having that gentleman's championship has sort of helped the driving standards as well, because it's all there to play for in regards to how you can go about things and make sure that you race clean, because if you race clean, even if you're not the fastest while you're racing clean, you've still got something to fight for and play for. So it sort of added an extra little bit of respect between the drivers there. I think that was a little bit unlucky for both of those guys. Tanaka may have come over a tiny little bit too close, but probably didn't do too much wrong. Just one of those unfortunate things. On for the lead. Tyson Myers through. I was not expecting to see that. I think that's a big, big issue there for Harris, because he's got out of the throttle and let Tyson Meyer through. He had a slowdown penalty for cutting the corner a little bit too aggressively at Le Mans.
I have knocked my microphone off its stand, but yes, building optimization systems replay. A lead in GTLM. Whoa, way out on the grass. Big slide.
He did a great job to hang on to that because that could have so easily just gone straight into the fence. Well done there from Robert Harris.
There's a half a second there where you're looking at that thinking he was going to hit that inside concrete wall. He didn't make any contact with his competitor either, but he's lost the lead of the race there. Just a little mistake, the pressure got to him. He's right up behind Tyson Meyer, and it's how they ran the first 10 or so, 5 or so laps, but just in reverse order here. And Meyer, I think he's going to have trouble getting away. Now the pressure is on him. Harris is here, and it suddenly looks a bit tidier now that he is the following car.
Exactly, and this is now where we can see how good Robert Harris is. I mean, these guys, if they finish in this order here, Tyson Meyer essentially wins the championship. If they swap back around, Robert Harris wins the championship. So this is a huge fight for this race, and of course, being the faster class car, for some reason it always has a little bit more prestige to it. In saying that, it has been a phenomenal championship the whole way through. But Harris just doesn't look as composed and as smooth as that car looked in qualifying. I think he might come in a little bit earlier than Tyson Meyer when it comes time for pit stops and make a tyre pressure adjustment.
Well, we'll see. I'm of the opinion that maybe the Porsche gets better as the fuel burns away, especially if that's how Harris has set it up, and that the Ferrari maybe seems like the car that goes through its tyres just a little bit quicker, especially the rear tyres. I think we've seen that in some previous races. Harris might prefer the balance of the car with less fuel in it, and I'd see him go as long as he possibly could. I don't know, it's definitely hard to predict.
There's so many options in this series, isn't there? Anything can and probably will happen, so that's what we love about it. It's why it's been such a fun championship, because you never can discount any possibility. But as we've seen, most of the guys run it as dry as they can, because then they're running more time with less fuel in the car. But when you see a car that's not handling at the moment, like that car of Robert Harris is, sometimes see something different happen, and we saw something different happen as we see another change of position. Olivier through on Simon Avatar. Good move into turn 1. That was a really, really good move, so well done from Olivier. But yeah, the car behaviour we saw in the last round, some guys weren't happy with their car performance and car behaviour in the last round at Imola. Come in early, made some changes, and it really did improve their pace.
Yeah, so all but one of the cars in GTLM involved in a little battle right now. 2 for the lead, 3 right behind, and these guys battling for the lead. Avatar suddenly under quite a bit of pressure. Olivier has come through, and Andrew Caron monstering the back of the Porsche. Tried to get through in turn 2, I think. Wasn't able to do it, and he's looking here, not going to get the move done. It breaks with 2 tyres on the grass and somehow just holds on to it. It did take away from some of the pressure he was putting on.
Yeah, and Avatar broke way too late there. We've also just been joined by a special guest as well. Big hello to Carlos Villa from Geodesic Racing. Good evening to you. Welcome along. What a fantastic championship this has been.
Absolutely. Definitely exceeded most of our expectations. It's been great racing all around. Great entertainment all across the entire 90 minutes pretty much every week. So super happy with what's happened. Looking forward for season 2 most definitely.
We are as well. We said already that it's going to be awesome. Whatever happens, whatever the plans are, we know that it's going to be great, because this championship has just been enjoyable from every aspect, from the admin side of it to race control to the actual racecraft out on track. Everything has been thoroughly enjoyable, and the prize pack that the guys are getting at the end that win the championship is even better.
Yeah, absolutely. GoPro was absolutely delighted with kind of the program that we presented to them, and came on board as a team sponsor early on in the year, and then once we kind of went into the further plans of Geo, they jumped right on it and fully supported the project and what we were doing. So not every race you get to go into a sim and race for an actual, $300-400 prize.
100%. There's not many series that have a real prize out there as well, other than just some bragging rights. So it's been great to have it. I know you're here to thank some people, as we just saw that move done there finally for Avatar and Caron, but Avatar come back. Go through who you need to thank while we can.
Well, we'll start with you guys. I mean, you guys have been fantastic partners through this endeavor. I know the time slot sacrifices are great for you guys to be doing this at this kind of time of the day. So there's been, we also had discussions about what the future is, so we'll get to that at some point. All our partners, Alpine Stars, GoPro, are one of our newest sponsors, Altshift Supply, who's a distributor for Alpine Star, who's also came on board and doing the $50 for this particular round. Everybody at Geo, and pretty much the community overall. We do this for the community as a whole, whether you're involved in it or not. I know there's tons of people out there, whether YouTube or Twitch, that may not be part of the sim, but they're spectators. So, all of this is mostly for them.
100%. I think you forgot one, building optimization systems, who we just got the replay up on screen as well. We need to thank them, as Andrew Karen almost got the move done on Avatar again and then looped it almost at Sunset Bend. He's going to have to work hard to get that time back, but building optimization systems have been fantastic to have on board as well.
Yeah, they definitely came on board from no particular background related to sim racing, and they were super interested from the get-go and supplied us with some decent funding to do this as well. So definitely thank you to them as well.
It's turning into be a very, very interesting race as well, because the battle at the front for GTLM, we've been saying that whoever wins the race between the two drivers battling at the moment essentially wins the championship. It's not much more than that, is it?
No, I don't. Unless hopefully it doesn't happen, but should they fall back, then the point situations kind of change a little bit. But right now it's pretty much a straight fight to the line, whoever gets there first. In GTD is kind of a similar scenario, with John, Brian, and Ferris. Obviously Brian has a little bit of a cushion, and he can sacrifice the win as long as he finishes P2. I think I make the calculations, and if Brian falls to P3, then he gets real tight. I think Ferris needs to win while Brian finishes P3 for Ferris to win. If John wins, Brian needs to finish P3 at least, and it's actually, by that point, there'll be a tiebreaker on wins, which Brian has that cover. So it's interesting, and kind of the strategy that they had at the beginning with Victor kind of playing teammate to John and Brian a little bit. So it's pretty interesting. I don't know their team situation, so I don't know if they're on a specific strategy. I will kind of hope they're not, and they're on a straight fight against each other. That will be interesting to watch, but that's kind of one of the caveats when you race against teammates. So it'll be interesting for sure at the end of the 90 minutes.
Well, thank you very much for jumping in and having a chat, and congratulations to you and the entire Geodesic crew for what you've done with this championship, because it's been phenomenal the whole way through, and we're looking forward to seeing what the plans are for Season 2 in the next little while. Thanks to Carlos Villa for jumping in.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you, guys.
It's turning into a very, very spicy little battle all the way through the field. The lead battle's ebbing and flowing so much in both classes right now, and that little mistake there from Andrew Karen was probably a little bit of forcing an issue too quickly. It's been a bit tough for him out there, and now he's dropped about 3.5 seconds back.
Well, how many times have we seen him have a little oversteery moment? So when he had to dive it down the inside of Sunset Bend at speed, maybe not entirely surprising, the rear didn't quite stick on that maneuver. It's a shame because he's pretty quick. It's just the consistency's been a little bit of an issue. Tyson Meyer, though, he's picked up the pace on that lap, and Harris runs wide out of turn 1. This is the most gap that Meyer's had in the lead of the race in a little while. He's still not dropping Harris yet, though.
No, that last lap, it was about 4 tenths quicker, but that's the slowest lap that Harris has had in this entire race, and The biggest gap that has been between these two drivers all race is 0.8 of a second. So there's nothing really between them the whole race. It's been incredible. So, Lockwood's come back again at John Miller. So that got back out to nearly a second, dropped into 0.3, went back to about 0.9, and it's back in under half a second again.
Ferris Stanley in the background there is faster than both of them for the second lap in a row. Pulled out a couple tenths the previous lap, pulled out a couple tenths on that lap. So Stanley is now just, what is it, a second and a half off the lead, 2 seconds, something in that frame. He's getting a lot closer to these two, Miller and Lockwood. Stanley's found quite a bit of pace now that we're 12 laps or so into the race. He's motoring along.
Definitely is. He's only 2 seconds back. When we was tucked in behind, or when, Victor Tanaka had that issue, he was around about 3.5 seconds back. So he's just slowly closing in. And if you do want to get some live timing on this race, you can check it out on our website at simspeed.tv/live timing, or also at simspeed.live, which has all of our live timing up to date for each broadcast event as well. Which I've just realised, I hope I have actually updated for this race. I'm sure I have. I'm going to have to check that now.
So
That'd be awkward if I didn't do that.
Yeah, come so far to fall at that final hurdle in this championship. I never doubted you.
I'm glad you didn't know, because I doubted myself. This is going to be a really interesting fight between teammates. I hope these guys really go at it in that last 20 minutes.
Well, I think if Miller wants to be the champion, he has to. Lockwood, because of his wins earlier in the championship, just has that little bit more of a buffer. He can finish second. He can finish in the order that they're running right now. Still take the championship. He can finish. Can he finish third with Miller in the lead and Stanley in second and still take the championship? I think basically it's difficult for anyone else to take the championship so long as Lockwood is standing on the podium.
Yeah.
It is going to get just a little bit more interesting for him once Stanley closes up there. Miller was actually quicker than Stanley on that particular lap, so it's evened out on that running, but before that, Stanley is lurking right in the picture. And this is what we were talking about on the pace lap is, save your fuel, because if you can cut 2 seconds out of your pit stop, it could mean a lot. Stanley is within 2 seconds of the lead of his class, even though he's down there in third. So he might have to be burning through the fuel to close up that gap, and that's probably the easiest way to do it. But there's still so much that can happen through the pit strategy here in this class. We're 1 hour 3 minutes remaining, I think. Probably still a couple laps away from GTD runners being able to pit and get to the end. Most of them will go right to the end of the window, which is probably where we're looking in half an hour with 30 minutes to go or so. But it's possible at this point that the GTD runners could almost fill their tanks and be able to get to the end from this point in the race.
Interesting thing here for Stanley is he's not far from the draft, so maybe another 2 tenths. If you can close maybe 2 or 3 tenths more, so maybe push for maybe 1 or 2 more laps, he'll then be in the draft. That'll close him up just based on his actual pace right now. And then he's back into fuel save mode, so he loses nothing and gains a heap of track position. So I think he really needs to push hard in the next 2 or 3 laps, close that gap down as quick as he can. He's already gained 3 tenths on this lap. And have a look at how close he is now. He probably is in draft range. He's that close now.
Yeah, and you got a good run out of Lamar too. I think that gap there at 1.1, 1.2 seconds. That's where you start to feel some of it. It's underneath 1 second that I think he'll have the most advantage. But yeah, he's closing it up. He can see what lines the drivers in front are taking. He can see what braking markers they're picking.
The bounce.
He'll learn something from that too. Yeah, that a lot of wiggle in that body as he comes through all of the bumps in the concrete at Sunset Bend. But whatever they've done for the setup, he seems to be holding onto it. Tanaka, who we saw sideways, lost a lot of time. He's now closed up onto the back of Zach Plummer. These two were close on the exit of a Lamar corner that time.
Tanaka, that was close there too. Plummer broke a lot earlier than Tanaka was expecting, and Tanaka had to change his line just to make sure he didn't make contact there. So this could be a very, very spicy little battle here between these two. Gap from first to third in this class now is 1.7 seconds, so he is definitely closing in. That's Ferris Stanley I'm meaning, but Tanaka I think Tanaka will get this move done in maybe by the end of the lap, maybe Sunset Bend on this lap. See if I'm right.
Tanaka certainly had the pace of the leaders earlier. I think he's got the speed. He's just looking for the opportunity to try and get past Zach Plummer. Maybe just a little bit quicker. Definitely qualified a little bit higher up the order as well, did Victor Tanaka than Zach Plummer. But, you know, it's hard for him to find a place to overtake. I mean, really, you're looking at into turn one, or, you know, if you find an opportunity towards Sunset Bend. But, you know, as long as there's no huge mistakes from the driver in front, it's actually not that easy to make a move. And Tanaka's already discovered that when Ferris Stanley had to find a unique opportunity to try and dive it down the inside. And even then, they were side by side, nose to nose for 3 corners, and it was only the little bit of contact that caused Victor Tanaka to lose out on that spot. I think he was able to defend it if it hadn't been for the tiny tap.
I think you're right too. I think that was the only thing that caused that little issue. Is actually Plummer was really good through the middle phase of that lap there. He's actually extended that gap back out. We said he was almost going to get the move done. My prediction is well and truly wrong, because Tanaka's nowhere near there. How cool is that brake glow though in the dark? So we're under an hour to go.
Yeah, I was going to point that out. Inside the last hour. Oh! How close was that to the wall? Tanaka pushing it very, very hard through Sunset Bend. Building optimization systems replay because he pushed it just a little bit too hard. Found a tiny bit of grass but didn't find any wall. So on board here, the view with Tanaka. He pushes out, gets the throttle to full, doesn't want to lift out of it. Just outside tyres on the grass. That's a scary moment. He came so close to those tyres but just kept the car out of them.
Yeah, that little tyre bundle that sort of sticks out at the last little moment was so close to making contact with the front of his car. Last lap by these 3 here, all pretty much the same time. A high 58.7, a high 58.7, and a low 58.8. So all within half a tenth of a second, these 3 cars. So nothing separating these 3 at the moment. They are all very, very even for pace, skill, and championship points are also very, very close too, as we said many, many times.
Yeah, you sense that, you know, we've had that first 30 minutes. These guys have settled into a bit of a groove. And maybe this is, you know, you're sort of calm before the storm, and it'll all kick off again maybe 2 laps before the pit stops and around that time of the pit stops, and then the sprint to the end after that. So at this point, you know, if you're Brian Lockwood, he's saving fuel. He's probably going to have a shorter pit stop than his teammate John Miller in front, who may be doing the team thing at this point, or maybe they'll each get the elbows out later on, but certainly, you know, the driver's got more to lose than to gain being aggressive at this phase in the race. We often see the gloves come off 2 laps before the pit stops when you want to build out a bit of a gap to try and be more certain that you'll still come out of the pits in front of the other drivers you're racing, to try and protect yourself from being undercut or overcut or whatever the strategy ends up being. We're sort of in this halfway through the stint mentality, I think, for the GTD guys right now. And sort of also for the GTLM guys, where the only battle is between the leaders, but I think Caron will close back up onto Simon Avatal later into the race.
Your last lap by was 4/10 quicker, so he's definitely got the pace. He just couldn't quite get that move done. He tried to get it done too quick, I'm pretty sure on that, but Tanaka's also trying to close back in on Zach Plummer in the background, but this battle here is by far the most important battle in this race. Ferris Stanley now within, what's that, 1.3 seconds now of Lockwood again, so he's closing back in once again. This is going to be a very, very good fight. This is going to go right into the pit stops, and I think they're going to stay in the same order pretty much after the pit stops as well.
Yeah, Lockwood doesn't look like he's being held up at all, or that he needs to get past his teammate and leader right now, but there was a little bit through the hairpin there where I think Lockwood was, you know, within a car length of Miller, much closer than we'd seen him earlier. So he needs Miller to be consistent, otherwise it will squeeze him backwards and towards Ferris Stanley. And I don't think he wants to go wheel to wheel with Ferris Stanley yet at this point in the race.
Yeah, 100%. I think these 2 here really want to work together and try and extend that gap. You can tell that all 3 of these guys are pushing. Their lap times show it. There's only been 5 of our 9 starters, 6 of our 9 starters, with one of them, of course, being off. Jesper Drelika's out of the race, but These front three are the only ones that are doing 1 minute 58s. Everyone else is doing 59s, 2 minutes and 2 minute 1 lap times. So these three are by far the class of the championship, as you can see from the championship points. They're also very, very quick out there on track right now.
Another lap in the books for our leaders. 58.9, 58.9 for Miller and Lockwood, but a 58.7 for Ferris Stanley that time around. So he has kept the consistency, but he's still, it feels like it's been 5 laps or so. He's been just that distance behind Brian Lockwood, where it's like, is he picking up much of a slipstream? Maybe a little bit. Tell you what, he's not shy with some of the curbs through this section, and Lockwood has a little bit of a mistake, maybe a bit of understeer, pushes a bit wide. Suddenly, Stanley, I think, is in the picture.
Yep, 100% is now within 0.8 of a second. So that's draft range. It's the same gap first to second it is second to third. Stanley looks stronger now than he has at any point as the track cools off even further. It's dropped another degree now that the sun is setting. You can see the headlights really taking effect. The reflectors on the edge of the track also taking effect. So the headlights lighting up the edge of track reflectors, which I think is really, really cool to watch. They are very, very cool to see. It's turning into an intense battle. Have a look at how much better Stanley is on this lap for Brian Lockwood. He's made another little mistake, and Lockwood is almost out of the draft of John Miller ahead.
Yeah, I know what's going on. All of a sudden, from looking very, very smooth and unflappable, there's just, a couple of times that maybe Lockwood's pushed a tiny bit wide, especially through that section, turns 3 and 4 there. That's where we saw him kind of miss the apex, pick the throttle up a bit too late. And then this let Stanley right into the picture. He gave a little flash to the headlights and let Lockwood know he was there, as if Lockwood didn't already know. Suddenly, Ferris Stanley, 4/10 behind Brian Lockwood. Lockwood is not going to be picking up as much draft off his teammate as he would like. This is going to be very, very interesting. First and second in points, battling it out over second position on the track. Stanley looked so good on rails through Sunset Bend there. You see he gained about 2/10 or so. He looked very, very good through there. The long corners, I think Lockwood might be struggling with right now.
I think tyres now have been a big thing. Maybe Lockwood's pressed too hard in this phase of the race and his tyres aren't coping. As here comes Stanley. I think it's too early to make this move. Needs to plan this move out a little bit more, and that's cost him a little bit of time. Background, Tanaka and Plummer are getting close. We will stay with this though, because this is potentially championship changing right here.
Yeah, definitely could be. So Stanley now a tiny bit further back than he was, breaks down in towards the hairpin, and he brakes very, very late. Tries to pick up the throttle. The V10 not quite as torquey from the Audi, but he still stays very, very close indeed, and they'll be picking up just a little bit of slipstream here, there, towards Lamore Corner, down the back stretch, along the front stretch, and it'll be very, very difficult for Lockwood to get away. And now that Lockwood's driving in his mirrors, his teammate John Miller is just inching away from these two.
Definitely is. He's now out to a 1.4 second lead. So Stanley now trying to get this move done on Brian Lockwood as quick as he can, and Lockwood doesn't want to give up this spot because that opens the door to John Miller potentially stealing the championship. So Miller's going to hold on to this spot as much as he can. This is going to be a really, really cool fight. Have a look at how close again Ferris Stanley is. Brian Lockwood's going to have to defend this spot for the first time this race.
Yeah, indeed. There's just no trouble hitting the apex at all for Ferris Stanley. That car goes where he points it. Lockwood just looks like he has to wait a little bit to try and get the throttle open, because the car just pushing a little bit of understeer through some of the corners potentially. You see he's wide of the center apex of Sunset Bend, and Ferris Stanley has no troubles with that. Maybe picks the throttle up earlier as well. He's not been able to yet find a way past. These guys were 4/10 slower than Miller on that lap. He extends his lead over them by just a little more. He had a look into the corner up here last lap. Stanley again just maybe fakes a little bit towards the inside there, but he can't get anything done. He's going to try to set up the run out of this long corner and on the stretch down towards the hairpin. And again, Lockwood just can't quite get the Mercedes towards the apex there. And that's where he initially lost a little bit of time to Miller and let Stanley close up. And again, Stanley is good through there. And critically, Stanley's also looked really good on the brakes. Was that a lockup that he sent him towards the inside? I don't know, but wow. Lockwood holds on. Stanley either pulled out late or had locked a brake deep on the brakes.
Yep, one of the two. And what it's done, Lockwood did see him coming, and good job to make sure that he didn't get cleaned up there by Ferris Stanley, because that would have absolutely hurt both of them. Would have opened up the door for Zach Plummer and Victor Tanaka to come into this fight. We will get a replay of that, because that was a huge moment, and that could have absolutely killed both of these guys' race.
Yeah, seeing it on board from Ferris Stanley. I don't know whether that was an attempt at a move that was maybe a bit late, a bit bold, or if he'd been braking and put a tyre on the grass or something. We'll see it from the off-board angle here. What does it look like? A mistake from Stanley, or he just decides to dive for the inside? They got so close to touching there. My goodness, it was even closer from that angle than what it initially looked like when we saw it live.
Yep, and here comes Stanley again. Down the back straight into Sunset Bend, gets out of the throttle early, he doesn't want to get involved at that point. This is getting very, very spicy, and I said this last night when we were doing the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge with Brock, that we've been doing this long enough that you can sense when something huge is going to happen. I've got that weird feeling. It's almost like a sixth sense that you get as a sim racing commentator, that you can feel something's about to happen.
Well, you just get in a situation like this where we've seen Stanley's been very quick, and that Lockwood is struggling, and Lockwood has the points lead and therefore everything to lose. Stanley needs to finish ahead of Lockwood and therefore has nothing to lose, and you just take all of those factors into account, and that tells you that that something will happen, because Stanley, with far less to lose, is behind Brian Lockwood with a quick car. It writes itself.
100%. This is going to come all the way down to the pit stops. I wonder if Lockwood's thinking, Stanley's looking way too strong. Do I pit early to make sure that something doesn't happen between us so I can hold on to this spot? Then he's going to have fresh air, won't have to worry about these guys that he's apparently fighting with, and can just go out and run his own race. That could be what Brian Lockwood does. We've seen him do some different things strategy-wise throughout this championship. That could be what's happening in his mind right now.
Certainly, and to be able to talk with his teammates as well. And there's 3 of the Racecraft esports drivers in the GTD field, and will they all pit together? Will they all pit at different times? Does Lockwood want to pit on the same lap as Miller? And Victor Tanaka, well, he is just a little bit, about 10 seconds down the road from Brian Lockwood, and engaged in that battle with Zach Plummer, going to try and get past there. Sort of a reversal of this battle here. Here we've got an Audi hunting down a Mercedes. It's just behind them. They've got the Mercedes of Victor Tanaka trying to hunt down the Audi of Zach Plummer.
On that strategy thing too, where the Lockwood does come in early and make sure that then he doesn't have to battle with Ferris Stanley, does Stanley think, if Lockwood pits early, I'm following him in to keep that pressure on? That could be what he's thinking as well. It's so many different possibilities in this little battle. One thing that is definite is that Miller and Lockwood are now separated by 2.3 seconds. This is the first time all championship that Brian Lockwood has turned up, other than Phillip Island, where we would potentially were going to see a battle until a pit lane speeding penalty for Miller, that we were going to see a fight between these two, and that Lockwood looked vulnerable and looked like he may not be the absolute class of the field. He doesn't look anywhere near as strong as Miller does at the moment.
Yeah, he's really looking like maybe the 3rd or 4th fastest car in class right now, which is certainly out of character with, for example, Watkins Glen, where we saw Lockwood just get out, get clean, and run away with it and win by a double-digit number of seconds. This is a very different kind of race that he's having to run right here, where someone's in front of him and getting away, and he's looking in his mirrors and definitely under pressure from Ferris Stanley. And I think there's been laps where Victor Tanaka has looked like he was quicker than Brian Lockwood as well. He's not even looking like the 2nd fastest Racecraft driver.
Yeah, it's a very, very unusual thing. I'm wondering whether it's something with practice. Hasn't been able to practice as much this week, but we know how much preparation these guys have done for this championship, so it just doesn't look... It's not the same Brian Lockwood.
Stanley's definitely closer out of Le Mans than he's been on some of the previous runs. Down the back stretch here, just about a car length behind, and It doesn't actually look like he's closing up that much. Is he running down there with 90% throttle or something? He's going to take a widely different line. He just avoids eating some of those cones on the exit, but that does let him cross back underneath, get the throttle open maybe a little bit earlier. He exits the corner about as far back as he was at the entry. He has a better run down the straight. I think Stanley may be just entering a little bit of fuel-saving mode.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's done that just to maybe got out of the throttle a little bit earlier and then, you know, just didn't quite judge the spot. Decided that was a perfect spot to save some fuel. So this is going to be a really, really interesting fight. We are halfway through this race. And the best bit is we don't know who's going to win either championship. That is the best potential that you can have in any championship. Halfway through the final race, 2 classes, both still up in the air. That's incredible. First
Robert L. Harris in the pit lane. From second place in GTLM, the Porsche of Robert L. Harris. And he was running pretty close to Tyson Meyer. So this is very, very important. How much fuel Robert L. Harris takes, where he comes out on track. He needs to punch in a bunch of quick laps after this pit stop to try and undercut Tyson Meyer. Halfway in the race. Interesting time to pit for Harris.
Have a look at Lockwood there. Had a huge moment. And now he's feeling the pressure from Stanley. There's almost contact again. So they did bump earlier when they did go side by side where we thought Stanley may have had that mistake. They had a tiny little bit of contact. But this now is huge pressure being applied from Ferris Stanley. Out of the pits comes Robert L. Harris. He has got a 5-second gap behind Andrew Caron and a 19-second stop. So that's the number we need to look at is 19 seconds. And before the pit stop, he was 1.1 seconds back from Tyson Meyer.
So 2 championship fighters in GTLM, now separated on track, now separated on pit strategy. That will no doubt converge later in the race, and we eagerly anticipate how that plays out. Meanwhile, we've got a proper battle on track as well. Ferris Stanley looks so much better through Sunset Bend, but doesn't quite pick up the exit he would have liked. Still tucked right underneath the rear wing of Brian Lockwood. In towards turn 1 they're going to go, and this is one of the places Stanley's looked strong as well. He's kind of faked to try and make a move into turn 2, turn 3 up here. He's not close enough, but you see he still moves out, takes a slightly different line, presents himself in the mirrors of Brian Lockwood, who doesn't fall for it. But just Stanley takes so much more curb through this bit of the lap here.
And the car just looks like it's okay with it. It doesn't look like it handles it very, very well. It's just so smooth and comfortable. And here we go now.
Lockwood
True defense
defending.
from Lockwood. He knows that Stanley's close enough to get this done, but gonna have to go again because won't be able to get through as Ferris Stanley. All that work he did to gain that momentum, he's gonna have to go all over again.
Yeah, indeed. It'd be so tough to go around the outside of that hairpin turn there as well. So Stanley was not even fully alongside. What is this? He dives it up the inside here. This is going to be towards Tower. Who's going to have the better run? Lockwood's got his nose just in front. Lockwood's almost clear, but not quite. He's going to squeeze Stanley all the way. Stanley's still going to try and throw it up the inside into Tower. Can't quite do it. Stanley trying all of the unconventional places to try and get a move done. Dominic Olivier from GTLM, second GTLM runner to jump into the pit lane as well, and that's in his fight to try and hold on to third position against the likes of Karen and Avatar that he was fighting.
We said before too that we thought that Andrew Caron would close back in on Simon Avatar after his little whoopsie. He's now back within a second once more. So Andrew Caron has some really great pace. He's the third fastest car out there on track. So Andrew Caron definitely showing that he's got great pace. He just hasn't been able to use the car to his liking based on those spins that he's had. Ferris Stanley as well looks very, very strong. It's John Miller is by far the quickest out there. He is now, have a look at the lap time difference between Miller and Lockwood. I think Lockwood's saving a chunk of fuel because Miller 1.1 seconds quicker that lap than Brian Lockwood.
Yeah, they were almost inseparable early on, and now this big difference in their pace, letting Miller get on away. This, maybe I'm reading far too much into this, and that's potentially very likely, but what if Miller jumps on away, Lockwood backs up Ferris Stanley, these two race? Would that allow Miller to jump Stanley in the championship standings? I think it would. If Lockwood feels like he's got this wrapped up, then really the race in the championship here over second place is between Miller and Stanley, and Lockwood is certainly, whether intentionally or inadvertently, helping the championship chances there of John Miller to make it a Racecraft 1-2, which is a very, very nice thing to be able to hang on your wall.
Yep, 100%. And definitely could be what's going on. Fingers crossed it is for their sake. But Ferris Stanley's going to be hard to push out of this position. It's all so close. And of course, traffic's going to play an impact later on in the race too. So if you are being lapped by the cars in GTLM as a GTD runner, if you can time that better, that's a huge advantage to your opponent. If you time it badly and a GTLM has a big dive bomb, forces you wide, well then you're going to lose out. So you really have to work well with the faster cars, because that can lose you 2, 3, 4, 5 tenths, even a second depending on where another car comes past you. So these guys have to think about that, because they're not far away from being lapped as well.
Yeah, GTLM leader Tyson Meyer has already been through a couple of the GTD cars, working his way further up the order. That might have been one of the reasons that, for example, Robert Harris jumped into the pit lane when he did, try and avoid a bit of traffic. I don't think Meyer's lost much time with any of the GTD cars he's had to pass. I think that might have been the consideration from Harris. Do something different, hope that the traffic impedes Tyson Meyer. We'll see how that plays out, but Harris is, since his pit stop, basically matching the times identical to Tyson Meyer as well, so it'll all come down to the pit stop time for Meyer, who's in the lead of that class when all the pit stops are done. Harris is still doing all the right things to emerge close to Tyson Meyer.
Interesting thing with that is, of course, that Robert L. Harris has got more fuel in the tank than Tyson Meyer and doing identical lap times. So that bodes well for Harris in the next little phase of the race. So we're about, 10, 12 minutes off seeing Tyson Meyer come in. That'll close that gap back down, but at the moment is 42 seconds. Dominique Olivier also has, as we said, made his pit stop, 21 second stop. So 2 second longer stop for his BMW over Harris's Porsche. The battle between Stanley and Lockwood still going on, but it's not as close as it was last lap or the lap previous. Stanley looks like he's almost decided to reset and try and start this little battle again, try and work out where he can get through, because what he was doing before definitely wasn't working.
Yeah, he tried, and Lockwood just appeared to be able to get just enough drive off some of the corners and appeared to be able to make the right moves to defend, and Stanley wasn't able to go around the outside. So off the Lamore corner, down back stretch here. Stanley, again, looks good through the corner, but then just doesn't close up enough down the straight.
Well, that's the big place that the Merc is so good, is through these big long straights. So they do have a big advantage in that part, but the Audi's so nimble, and it looks like it's just handling the curbs. It can use so much more track as well, the Audi, so that's where the Audi makes it all back. So that's why you can see these cars are all close. And talking about our manufacturers, we've got Mercedes, Audi, Mercedes, Audi, top 6 in this class. In the other class, Ferrari, Porsche, BMW was the first 3 before the pit stop. Still currently that order as well. So we have a very, very mixed up field. As we said before the start, we thought this track was the most neutral track out of the entire calendar. Looking at the positions at the moment, it looks like that is the case.
Stanley a bit closer once again, and Lockwood defending, taking the middle of the circuit this time. Stanley deep on the brakes, but can't go around the outside, so he's going to try and cross it back underneath, take a later apex, get on the accelerator earlier. He's still right there, and this is the corner where he took a very, very late dive earlier. Is he going to try it again? He's almost thought about it, but he's not. And Stanley now looking fighting again, but just not able to find a way through at this point. I think both of our classes are probably only just a couple laps away from their pit stops. GTD can go a little bit over an hour, GTLM typically just a teeny bit under an hour. We've had almost 55 minutes of racing, so all the GTLMs probably soon, and the GTD guys, well, they're getting close to it as well.
Yep, exactly right. And also we said Caron was getting close. It's not just close, he is there now too. So you can see that big boy in the background, or right in the middle actually, right on the tail now of Simon Avatal. So This is a pretty close little fight here. We'll see if Karen can get through before the pit stops. As we said, they're not far away. They're coming up. The next little bit is Ferris Stanley's dropped another couple of tenths on this lap, so we'll see if he can close that back up in the next little bit. Tyson Meyer leads by 37 seconds at the moment. Of course, pit stops being a factor into that, but so we've got our first pitter. Here we go. Ferris Stanley's in.
First GTD pit stop of the race is Ferris Stanley trying potentially to undercut Brian Lockwood because his attempts to get by on the circuit have not worked. The pit lane time here from Ferris Stanley is going to be critical for us to keep an eye on because he needs it to be short. Brian Lockwood needs it to not be. John Miller, maybe he's got just enough left in his pocket as well. Victor Tanaka, another driver.
He's dropped off.
Yeah, he was right up behind Zach Plummer and he's had an issue.
That must have been the lap previous, because last lap was the same time pretty much, but the lap previous he was a lot slower, so something has happened. So we've missed that, unfortunately. Ferris Stanley out, 21-second stop. David Browning has also come in for the Team Tortuga driver, so the two of our Team Tortuga drivers are both in and done. Of course, Robert L. Harris being the other one, as he comes past the pit wall. He's actually lost 2 seconds since the pit stop from Tyson Meyer. So we said before the gap was 42.5 seconds, or 42.2. He's now 44. So he has lost a couple of seconds. But
Meyer's put in some great laps recently,
yeah.
As he's burnt the fuel down and Harris hasn't been able to quite keep the pace up. Harris was 7 tenths off that lap and then I think 6 tenths off the previous lap. So as it works right now, Harris maybe thought he had to try something different, but Meyer has got the pace at the moment that it looks like if he has the same pit stop time, he'll come out a couple seconds clear of Harris. So Meyer just needs to be clean and tidy. He doesn't need to do anything crazy. He doesn't need to push the boundaries too hard. He just needs the rest of his race to be flawless. Up on the jacks for David Browning, taking some tyres. That's an interesting strategy there.
And he was still stopped too. So is that a penalty as our leaders come in? John Miller and also Brian Lockwood into the pits. So they're making sure that Ferris Stanley doesn't get a big advantage from that. But yeah, David Browning getting tyres and then dropped and then was still stopped. So I'm wondering if he got a speeding in pit lane penalty and goes, well, I might as well take tyres. There's nothing left for the race for him now. That's the only thing I can think is Andrak also still stopped. Miller stopped, Lockwood stopped. Here we go.
Tyson Meyer in the lane as well. So everyone taking the pit lane stops right now. Remember, Stanley's time in GTD was 21 seconds. John Miller's just approaching that. He's not at too much risk. He'll take on board a little bit more fuel. 23 seconds for John Miller. Stanley hits the wall on the exit of Sunset Bend. That is huge. Lockwood also with 23 seconds of fuel, so it was a 2-second quicker stop for Stanley, but he's pushed out wide into the wall. He'll come out ahead of Lockwood still. What damage has Stanley maybe taken there?
Yo, just a light little hit on the tyre bundle, so he might be okay as Tyson Meyer comes out with a 19-second stop. We'll see where he is in relation to Harris. There is Meyer. And where is Harris? There he is there. So he's lost about 3 seconds in total from the pit stops. It was 1.1 before the stops. It is now 4.4. So almost 3.5 seconds in that stop as we go back to Ferris Stanley. Of course, his tyres are straight back up to temp, so he's already at race pace. John Miller will be trying to get accustomed to this high fuel load again with these worn tyres. Can sometimes throw some drivers off when they do make their stops with that adjustment in car performance and car balance. Can take a few corners to get used to, which could have been why Stanley actually made that mistake. So this is going to be a really interesting fight there.
I think Stanley knew it was make or break time for him really right there, is that he needed to get a bit of an undercut. He needed to push so hard on his outlap if he was going to come out in front of Brian Lockwood, and he did. It's very, very interesting, and that's a difference of about 2.2 seconds in how much fuel they put in the car that lets Stanley jump ahead with a quicker pit stop than Lockwood. Stanley, unless the Audi is much more economical, then he's taking quite the gamble, I think, Stanley, on the fuel number.
Well, remember those last couple of laps he was tucked in behind. He didn't even try and make a move, so he was quite happy to say that.
Yeah, but all the laps that Lockwood ran right behind John Miller. So we'll see how that one rolls out towards the end. Stanley, again, I say, it was make or break time. He had to take the risk. That's the situation there where Lockwood can't afford to take a risk, and Stanley can't afford to not take the risks. We look again at Avatal and Karen. These guys must surely be due a pit stop. Andrew Karen doesn't think he is. Simon Avatal thinks he does. And that separates that battle as one of them jumps into the pits, and Andrew Karen stays out, gets scored in the lead of the race until he has to pit next time. He's only 1.2 seconds ahead of Tyson Meyer, though, who has already pitted. Meyer can't afford to be held up too much behind Karen.
I think he's happy that he saw Avatar come in, because if they continue to fight, because Karen was ready to make the move, that could have meant that Meyer would lose a bit of ground or potentially get involved in an incident if those two did come together. So I'm sure Tyson Meyer's overjoyed that one of those two has pitted. He would have preferred both, but he'll take one. Brian Lockwood's done really well on this outlap. So he was 2.3 seconds back when he came out of the pits, back down to 1.5. So he's closing back in on Ferris Stanley very, very quickly. So the battle that we thought may be over is back on once again. Of course, roles reversed.
Yeah, indeed. So we'll see how that shapes out. I mean, we've definitely seen many, many stages through this championship where Brian Lockwood has been able to punch in the quick laps where necessary. Maybe that's what he's got to do now. Head down, close that gap up if he can. And sometimes it just happens that just rolling through the pit lane, taking that time, lets you cool the tyres off just a little bit. And maybe that'll help the Mercedes here, is that he'll just be able to get the temperature of the tyres back under control again. Zach Plummer, the last car in GTD to pit, he's on the lane right now. Expect him to probably come out in 4th place, unless there's any dramas in his pit stop. Karen being scored in the lead of GTLM. Tyson Meyer is the net leader once we factor in all of the pit stops. Karen in front doesn't have to wave Meyer through, and Meyer only has about 5 seconds over Robert Harris. Shouldn't be a drama, but Meyer, the way he's going right now is he can't afford to take those risks. He doesn't want Karen to impede him. Karen into the pit lane, Meyer back into the lead of the race, and therefore, de facto, the championship if it finishes how they're running now.
Yep, exactly right. So, just seeing here, Victor Tanaka is battling with Zach Plummer, who comes out ahead. So they were pretty close. Zach Plummer and Victor Tanaka. We said there was a mistake, obviously, which cost Tanaka a little bit of time, but they're still separated by about the same gap, 2.5 seconds. So that'll continue that battle. Meyer to Harris. Again, another second on that last lap. So Tyson Meyer is absolutely flying right now.
Yeah, indeed, the gap he's got the lead, 3.7 seconds, and again, he just needs to hold on to that. An issue for Karen, or he's on his outlap? Okay, Dominic Oliveira has come through and passed Andrew Karen right at the exit of the pit lane there. So Oliveira, who pitted a little bit earlier, maybe affected a tiny bit of an undercut on some of those guys. There was a point where Oliveira, Karen, and Avatal were all fighting over 3rd place in GTLM. After the pit stops now, they're all pretty close together, especially Oliveira and Karen. See if another battle brews again in GTLM, because at the moment it's all about GTD. Miller from Stanley from Lockwood. Stanley fighting everything he can for the championship. He needs to win this race, and he needs some of the other drivers to finish in a particular order. So Stanley needs to keep pulling away from Lockwood, needs to close up to Miller. Miller's been quick. Lockwood trying to just finish on the podium to grab the inaugural Geodesic GoPro Championship.
Yep, exactly right. And he needs to probably try and close that gap and apply some pressure to Ferris Stanley to hold off and help out his teammate in John Miller. That last lap by, all separated by a 10th. This lap by 59.2 for Miller, 59.3 and a 59.6 for Lockwood. So Lockwood is dropping back from these guys. He's struggling. But the front two in this class, this is going to come right down to the wire.
Yep, and it's not just about the overall championship, but also a prize on the line for the class winner of this race. $50, courtesy of www.altshiftsupply.com, the series partners for that one. So even if Stanley takes the win, and even if that's not enough to grab him the championship, he'd still walk away a winner from this round, and with a little more in his pocket as well. So that is definitely an incentive to fight more than just pride, especially when you can see the leader just a second and some in front of you.
it's definitely a bit of extra motivation there. So we're just hearing that Ferris has to pass John to potentially steal the championship. So it's not as 100% locked in as we thought. It's pretty much Lockwood wins the championship if he gets a podium, but Stanley can get through on Miller, and it goes Ferris, Stanley, Stanley, Miller, and Lockwood. I believe that Stanley would win the championship by not much, but just enough. I think that's right in how I'm reading that information. I could be completely wrong, but that's the way I'm reading it. Find out.
I'm definitely taking a second look at the numbers just to try and be certain. But yeah, Lockwood came into this 13 points ahead of Stanley. Stanley just 2 points ahead of John Miller. 50 points for the win, 40 points for second. There's all kinds of permutations going on, and that's what we thought would happen with 3 drivers with the mathematical contention of the win and the championship in GTD. And 3 of them very close on track as well.
25 minutes left in this championship. This is going to come right down to the wire. This lap, you can see on the timing there, you had a 1.2 seconds between our first and second place cars. A 10th back in the favour of Ferris Stanley. Lockwood's dropped another 10th from these guys, so he's under pressure from behind now because Zach Plummer's looking very, very quick too. So Lockwood could lose the championship based on his position at the moment because his pace is not as great as he would like it to be. This is the first time all season that we've seen real issues for Brian Lockwood. Also seeing on the timing, have a look at the lap times last time by for Tyson Meyer versus Robert Harris. Meyer's lost half a second on that lap, and the lap previous he lost 1.2, so it's back down to 4 seconds.
Yeah, the leaders of GTLM and the leaders of GTD are in pretty much the same place on the circuit here. Tyson Meyer is trying to get past Ferris Stanley at this point, and Stanley, of course, is in a battle for his life. Unlike some of the other GTD cars, he's not going to be quite as nice at trying to get out of the way, because every 10th matters for Stanley right now. So I think some of what we're seeing there between Meyer and Harris is just the ebb and flow of the traffic, now that half of our field are in the same corner coming through Tower Bend.
It's going to be a really interesting fight, and yeah, Ferris Stanley lost around about half a second there. We said before that making sure that you get past in the right way and use that traffic to your advantage as opposed to working against them and it costing you time. Stanley probably cost himself a little bit of time there. He could have got out of the throttle on the straight, tucked in behind, and then used that advantage to close back up. Now Miller, he's going to have the perfect spot because Tyson Meyer's not even going to have any issues getting by down the straight. So while Stanley lost out, Miller's not going to lose a thing.
"23 minutes remaining, and it is, I'll speak for myself, pretty tense. I think this is a close battle still. Anything possible in GTLM for that championship, and in GTD, what a race we're seeing, honestly. Our top 3 still separated by only 3 seconds. And I've been looking at the numbers, and it's going to be close.
Yeah, it's still quite a few battles going on out on track too, because Caron and Olivier are very, very close as well. So they're only separated by 0.4 of a second. Of course, we saw when we come out of the pits that Andrew Caron was a lot further back. He's closed in really, really quickly. Avatar's a mile back. So remember, Avatar was in this battle, and he's now 5 seconds back from these guys. So these guys have just absolutely blitzed him and smoked him because Avatar and Caron were nose to tail when Tyson Meyer was closing in.
Yeah, Avatar 3 seconds longer through the pit stops, but then he's also obviously lost a couple of other seconds somewhere else out on track, and that's all added together to the few seconds that we see. So now it's BMW versus BMW for the final step on the podium in GTLM. I think Karen, again, we've seen him very, very quick at times, just struggling with the balance and the consistency. Now he's here, and it's looking like he might shape up for the move, but he needs to be careful not to overdrive it, like we saw him do through Sunset Bend one time, and like we saw on lap 1 as well.
What this will likely do for Caron as well, this result of P4 will seal him third in the championship. Of course, he was battling with Enzo Johansson, but unfortunately Enzo not here for this round, so that will give Caron the third place, and Simon Avatar might be able to jump as well and get himself into 4th in the championship. So still a lot to play for in all of our championship fights, but the basic thing for the main championship, the GTLM championship, I shouldn't say main because they're both as important as each other, same prize pool, same fighting for both, is that whoever wins between Meyer and Harris wins the championship. Harris has not had as much good luck as Tyson Meyer did with the traffic. This here could cause a few issues here for John Miller and get that gap back down. As Miller's still fighting, he's run and forced very, very wide. This is a big advantage here for Ferris Stanley.
Yeah, and I've had a look at the numbers, had a second to think about it. 50 points for the win, 35 points for third. That's a 15-point swing between the two of them. Lockwood's lead, 13 points. If Stanley wins and Lockwood is third, Stanley is the champion. Now, Stanley gets past John Miller, then Miller need only drop behind his teammate Brian Lockwood to assure a Racecraft Esports champion and assist his teammate in that regard. But, you know, Ferris Stanley, the way it's running right now, if he continues to close in on the lead of the race and he gets that position done, then he can become champion here. Racecraft Esports, you know, they've put themselves, though, in the position of having multiple quick cars, multiple cars in the fight, where they're then able to play those games, where even if Stanley takes the win, as it is right now, John Miller would be able to help his team and help Brian Lockwood.
Never can say never in any of these races, though, because we've seen so much strange stuff go on in this championship. Just been one of the most exciting things about it. Every race we've had a talking point post-race, whether it be a speeding pit lane penalty, whether it's been a car spinning on the last couple of laps. There's always been something bizarre going on right towards the end of the race that you can just always expect the unexpected in this series. It has been phenomenal the whole way through. The unexpected from the start of the race to now is that three cars.
Harris in the pits for the second time.
Oh no!
Robert Harris is in the pits for a second time. He was trying to close in on Tyson Meyer for the lead of the race. He was trying to close in on Tyson Meyer for the championship.
Oh, he hit the wall!
Robert L. Harris has hit the wall hard out of Sunset Bend, brought the car across and into the pit lane, pushing too hard, and I have to say, that is probably his hopes of the championship extinguished.
He's actually
Robert L. Harris.
He's actually DNF'd. He's officially DNF'd this race. Pushing the car a little bit too hard. I reckon he suffered wheel damage from that. And that is his championship done. Unfortunate for him, but we come back live because Stanley is now within 0.6 of a second. This draft is huge now for Ferris Stanley.
The Racecraft Esports guys need to drive smart right now, and Ferris Stanley needs to drive quick. He's definitely well within that draft range now of the leader, who I think had a little bit of struggle putting the power down, a little bit of a wiggle there. Stanley gets even closer within 0.2 in towards Tower Bend. He's going to take the later apex, try and get a good run, and into the next braking zone is where he dove down the inside of Victor Tanaka earlier. I think Ferris Stanley is going to throw all of his caution into that wind right now. He wants to get to the lead of this race to have any hope of being the inaugural GTD GoPro champion. He needs to get to the lead of this race. Your top three in the championship, your top three in the race within the one picture there. And Stanley looking to see towards Sunset Bend. Can he get his Audi into the lead of the race?
And Lockwood's closed up again as well. Last lap by Miller and Stanley both did a 2-minute lap time. 1:59.1 for Lockwood. Of course, they both had issues with those GTLM cars. As here comes Ferris Stanley. He's got the run down the front straight. They've got about 10 laps to go. This is going to come right down to the wire the whole way to the end. Stanley dives. There's contact! Oh, in a regressive position there by the looks of it between Stanley. No, he's continuing on and going through. I'm sure race control are going to look at this, but have a look at who's capitalising big time. Brian Lockwood through and takes the lead back in this race.
Wow, huge changes of position there. Brian Lockwood into the middle, Stanley into second. Back into third place goes John Miller, and all three cars separated in just 3 cars widths as well. Stanley took a big dive down the inside of turn 1. The contact was made, and Lockwood needs to make that the widest Mercedes in the world right now. Down towards the hairpin, he defends as well, and Stanley cannot get the move done That was a huge move that we just saw. Positions swapped in 2 corners. From the lead of the race, John Miller goes back into third, and from third, Lockwood forces his way back up into the lead of the race. More problems for Miller. Maybe the bit of damage on the rear of that car.
Yeah, he doesn't look happy at this present stage. We're going to get another replay of that because, or another look at that, because that's game changing, that is championship changing, and that is under review from Race Control.
So it was a great run out of the final corner from Stanley. Defends just a car width or so towards the inside, and Miller, the two come together in turn 1. Stanley tries to jump into the lead of the race, but Lockwood has a great run and did great to actually go around the outside of Ferris Stanley. Huge drift that he just could not save there. Stanley had to get off the throttle in the middle of the corner. Lockwood comes from quite a distance back and manages to come through into the lead of the race. Going through Sunset Bend right now, Lockwood trying to hold on to the lead of the race, trying to hold on to his chance at the championship right now.
What a fight for this championship. It is going to come right down to the wire. In the current order that they are in now, Ryan Lockwood would win 6 out of the 6 races he started in this championship to win the championship. Perfect drive for him in every race he's been able to attend, but it hasn't been as smooth sailing as that. He hasn't had it all as easy as he would like. You remember back to Phillip Island where John Miller would have won the race, we believe, if he didn't have a speeding in pit lane penalty. We're going to cut away to the new battle for second in the GTLM Championship, because, or GTLM class I should say, because Dominic Olivier, he's got a lot of pressure behind from Andrew Caron, who looks really quick at the moment.
Well, he's looked quick all race, and certainly he's still right there, and this is the battle that we saw earlier when it was for 3rd and 4th. It's now over 2nd and 3rd after the unfortunate retirement of Robert Harris to the hairpin. No dive there from Caron. He'll try and get the power down as early as he can, and he's done a pretty decent job of that. So he's right up behind the rear wing, Dominic Oliveira. And one thing we've learned is that with these BMWs, that they don't actually draft each other as strongly as some of the other cars. They're pretty reasonable in a straight line. They don't gain a whole lot in the draft behind another one of the other car, but Oliveira is having to defend into tower. Caron going to try and dive back down with a later apex, pick the throttle up again earlier, and Oliveira has been able to keep him behind, but just for a couple braking zones in a row has had to just, not open up the inside lest Andrew Caron try and dive up there.
This is turning into a very, very interesting battle, and of course this could change where these guys finish championship-wise as well. So this is going to be a very, very interesting fight, and also hearing from Race Control that they will look at this post-race, that incident. So they are looking into it, but I think that it's too late in the race to affect someone's race with a drive-through penalty or anything like that, but from the original or the initial hearing is that they are putting blame on John Miller for turning in a little bit too early, which sort of looked like, I don't think Ferris Stanley really did anything wrong there too much, because the line that Miller took was a bit strange.
Well, it's a weird little corner is turn 1 here. It's such a wide entry and so wide through the middle of the corner. Again, it's another one of those corners where there's several lines. I think when you're John Miller and you're on the outside, you need to expect that the driver to the inside might not take the tightest line towards the apex.
There we go, confirmed from Race Control, incident between 173 and 111. No further action. What it's done, it's meant that Stanley now has gone from potentially winning the championship to now going to have to settle for second at the current rate, because Lockwood is actually pulling away a tiny little bit.
Yeah, certainly John Miller also fading into the background here, and with these cars, and how closely matched the drivers have been, a little bit of contact like that only needs to upset your damage and your aerodynamics a little bit before you give away 2 or 3 tenths of a second per lap, and that can mean so much with how close Brian Lockwood, Ferris Stanley, and John Miller have all been in pace through qualifying and through the hour and 20 minutes that we've almost had of this race now. So Lockwood, yeah, that's a couple of car lengths of lead he's got there, doing everything he needs to do.
Also noticing on the timing screen that Tyson Myers' pace has dropped off a little bit. Of course, no point in fighting too hard and pushing too hard. It's all the potential to lose the race if he pushes way too hard, as we see Caron and Olivier tucked in underneath the rear wing of Victor Tanaka, trying to close in and get the move done. And Caron's right there. He wants that second place. He doesn't want to fight for third or take third. He wants to fight the whole way and get that second position.
Yeah, coming into this round, Caron was tied third in the point standings with Enzo Johansson, who is not here at this round. And Olivier is 20 points or so further behind that. So as they stand right now, Andrew Caron would definitely lock up third place. I'm not sure if second place is in range for him, but he's going to have to go around the outside towards the hairpin because Olivier is going to defend the inside, and he almost keeps the car around the outside there, but just can't quite do it. Championship-wise, though, Caron's doing everything right, I think, to lock up definitely a top 3 in the GTLM standings.
Yep. So there's no chance for anyone else to win the championship in this class. There's over 100 points separating second and third, but Caron doing everything he can to make sure that the drop rounds work in his favour and he can take the championship the championship third, which I reckon is a pretty good result when you look at how strong the fields are in this class. Look at the iRating for this race, how strong the drivers are out there. The GTLM strength of field is over 4,000. Yeah, to win a race with over 4,000 iRating is pretty phenomenal. Tough ask.
Yeah, indeed, a lot of strong drivers. Oh, another big wiggle from Caron there as he came out of Sunset Bend, and that time he got just a little bit of the grass, and that puts a dampener on his ability to come out of that corner quick and try and close down on Olivier towards Sunset Bend. We'll see what happens here. And out on the grass, there's a couple of bumps out there as well, and that also upset the car. Rear got loose, but he managed to hold on to it, get it back onto the black stuff, onto the pavement there, and get it pointing the correct direction, but it's not the quickest way. He just could not get the power down cleanly.
Ferris Stanley's closed that gap back down again, last lap by 0.4 of a second quicker, so closed it back in. It was almost a second, back down to half, so this is getting very, very intense once more. This is not over. They've got about 5 laps to go, so this is going to come right down to the end of this race. And you know, something funny, I said before that we could sense something was going to happen. We've seen something happen. I don't think this is over. I think John Miller could still somehow win this race because I can feel and sense something happening between these two here.
We certainly saw at the end of the first stint that Lockwood's pace maybe dropped off a little bit. He looked a little bit more vulnerable. Now into this second stint, it might be happening again. Tyres for the Mercedes maybe don't hold on quite as well, especially to the end of 90 minutes of racing. And the Audi, which maybe just is a tiny bit more balanced with them. We saw that at Imola for certain in the GTD class, where Zach Plummer and Hayden Gober had a lot of pace come back to them deep in the race in their Audis that looked after the set of tyres just a little bit more than some of the Mercedes runners that were quick, but chewed through that grip just a little quicker. It stays pretty stable at 0.3 of a second or so. Lockwood leading ahead of Ferris Stanley. Stanley, like I've said, has nothing to lose by trying to throw a big move.
100%. He's very, very high possibility of throwing a big move, and he's got another great run out of Sunset Bend, but is he able to use it is the big key. The great power of the Merc just looks like it might be a tiny little bit too strong and won't be able to get a move done this time for Ferris Stanley. But have a look again. Look at that mid-corner speed that Ferris Stanley is able to carry through. I think he actually did too good a job there because he had to get out of it.
Yeah, massively quick on the turn in there. Lockwood goes a tiny bit wide of the apex here, and again, whoa, big dive. Is that going to work out? No, I don't think so. And if anything, just compromise his run out of that corner. Ferris Stanley is looking for some unique opportunities. Through that section, a couple of corners there, he's been able to jump over the curbs, and he got close to thinking about diving the car up the inside here. And I don't think it was ever going to work, but he's shown to Brian Lockwood that no opportunity is off the table. He'll consider anything.
Leave the window open and he'll try and get in there. Not just a door, he's just looking for the tiniest little margin to throw a move in there. He wants the win. He wants to try and get something out of the end of this championship because it has not gone 100% to plan for Ferris Stanley. But go back to this battle in the GTLM. Andrew Caron, he just can't get past Olivier here. He's just so close. He just can't quite get that last little bit done.
Certainly not. And we saw him struggle again. Look on the exit there. He's got to correct the slide of the rear of the car, and that's been the struggle all race, I think, for Andrew Caron. He'll have to learn what he learned the previous lap, apply it here through Le Mans, and keep it on circuit. Get a good run down towards Sunset Bend. Just keep trying to create opportunities. Again, he's just out a little bit wide, but Olivier has just felt the need to defend quite a couple of occasions. That's where Caron just can't get by.
5 minutes left on the clock, so not long to go in the inaugural Geodesic GoPro Championship here on SimSpeed TV. Been a phenomenal championship the whole way through. We've seen so many different winners, so much amazing racing, and a huge moment there between these two. There was almost contact. Olivier turned in really early. Oh no! Oh no. That is devastating for Olivier. He ran it probably a little bit too aggressive into turn in and just drifted too wide.
Yeah, a lot happened there. He got all the way out onto the dirty stuff as well, got a bit out of shape, and we'll see it again from a different angle on the building optimization systems replay. Defends the inside, pushes out a little bit wide, and he ends up on the dirty stuff, and that gets him proper out of shape. He has a big wiggle, knocks all of the cones over, and then still manages to find the wall right at the end there, unfortunately. So he's still got a couple seconds in hand over Simon Avatal, but certainly that let Andrew Caron through, who didn't need a second invitation. They touched just the slightest bit, or was it the wiggle there on the dirt for Oliveira? Regardless, I think that was the pressure eventually got to the number 9.
See it here. I don't believe there was any contact. It was close, but yeah, Andrew Caron did a great job of avoiding contact there, so well done from him to make sure he got through safely. So we come back live, so Caron now second, and I believe that will seal him third in the championship. So Andrew Caron just did enough pressure-wise. He was just there for so long to apply and make it look like he was wanting to get a move done, but just happy to sit there and watch. It turned it into a great move in the end. And a lot of younger drivers need to learn that one. A lot of young drivers just get a little bit too overeager trying to make the move straight away. A lot of these cars, you can either force someone into a mistake or just in some cases, as we saw last night in the TCR, you can actually go too wide. If you give yourself a little bit of room to defend on the outside, you can run it too wide in a lot of places in different cars, including the GTLM and GTD cars.
For the lead in GTD, what's on our screen, Lockwood has almost a second of buffer, which will feel like a lot compared to what he's had earlier in the race. He doesn't have Stanley right up underneath him again. The clock continues to tick down, and Lockwood will wish it said 1 second left on that clock, and he just wants to end things how they are right now. Ferris Stanley, I don't know what's going on. He's pushing it very hard. He's just not able to close that gap down. He's not as close as he was earlier. He's either worn the best of the tyres, he's either worried about fuel consumption. That could be a possibility, knowing he took 2 seconds less fuel than Brian Lockwood. Or Lockwood has found another gear deep in the race. There's a possibility it's a combination of those factors, but it's just letting Lockwood be 1.1 seconds clear right now, and looking a lot calmer than he's been earlier in the race.
I think that Stanley's just pushing way too hard to try and get that gap closed down, and he's just burnt the tyres up. He's got nothing left in them, and now starting to struggle and drop off. Last lap by was 3/10 slower, and he's lost a bit of time there. Was a little bit too aggressive through that chicane there. Could have even got a slowdown penalty. Needs to be careful that if he pushes too hard, he could actually lose second in this race, because Miller, who'll probably be looking for a bit of redemption, his pace has come back to him. He was actually the fastest car in the class.
Stanley's
yeah.
just dropped back 1.5 seconds. He's now 2.5 seconds off the lead. Now 2.6 seconds off lead, now 3 almost. Yeah, Stanley has... You said there was a risk he might have picked up a slowdown. I think Ferris Stanley must have, because he's just lost 1.5 seconds through those corners.
Have a look at how aggressive he is through the second part of the left-handers here. He'll clip that curb okay. Watch this one here. Straight across the yellow line. That'll definitely be his slowdown penalty that he's received there. So it's now 2.5 seconds back, or 3 seconds back. John Miller's not too far back from him too, as Miller actually was a little bit slower on that lap too, but Miller is looking quick, and as I said, Ferris Stanley pushing too hard could cost himself some time and cost himself second position. Well, he's almost done it there.
I think so. Now less than a minute on the clock. Might be 1.5 laps more still to run for the GTD runners, but Ferris Stanley, I think, has just gone in a little too hard there and cut the circuit just a little bit too fine, and I think that's his best opportunity to try and battle for the lead. Unfortunately gone. We look at Tyson Meyer, a GTLM leader, and he's done this in a couple of races this season, just looked untouchable, gotten away and into the lead, and he has 37 seconds over second place Andrew Carron. That's almost like the lead he had last round before he gave up a little bit of that, keeping some GTD cars on the lead lap. You know, he was very,
was
very
he keeping
close.
them on the lead lap, or just watching the battle that they were having?
I don't know, but yeah, certainly Meyer kept his cool in the first half of the race when he's battling with Robert Harris. Has now stamped his authority over the race.
Stanley's
Clock expires.
Come back to Lockwood.
Lockwood also had a problem. Is Lockwood worried about fuel?
Either that, or he's at a slowdown. As Stanley's slow again, and here comes Miller. Look at the run that Miller's got here on Ferris Stanley. There's an issue for Ferris Stanley. Is he a lap short on fuel? Because they're going to run an extra lap from what a few drivers were expecting. Stanley's going to lose his spot here.
Yeah, into Sunset Bend. He thinks about closing off the door there, but John Miller still slides up the inside. Ferris Stanley going to try and hold on the exit, potentially. I think John Miller's going to try and get that. They're side by side again into turn 1. Again, it's Stanley on the inside, but he has
Stanley
to roll
shot
out
on
of the throttle very early. John Miller comes through. We thought it was possible that might happen.
Have a listen to the throttle. He's out of fuel, is he? He's pretty close to being out of fuel. He might lose a lap. Tanaka's had to come in for a splash and dash, because we've gone 1 lap longer. The race pace at the front of the field in GTLM has meant that these drivers are now going to be 1 lap short, because we saw Tyson Meyer cross the line with 1 second left on the clock, which means that they do an extra lap. These guys have been caught out by that.
That was always the risk that Ferris Stanley was playing, taking 2 seconds less of fuel in the pit stop than the other racecraft guys. So he's also caught out Victor Tanaka as well. Once again, drama on the final lap of this championship.
Tyson Meyer, though, through the final corner for the final time in the final race of the championship. Congratulations to the Alpine Stars Geodesic Racing driver. Tyson Meyer picks up the win and is the inaugural Geodesic GoPro champion.
In the GTLM division, indeed, and he will pick up that fantastic prize, GoPro Hero 7 Black with action kit. Plus, there's plenty of other prizes and stuff that have been on offer as well, and Tyson Meyer, I'm sure, will be delighted with his performance, not just in this race, but all season long. Brian Lockwood has not failed to win a race that he has turned up at all season, and he also has 1 corner to go. It, at points today, didn't look like he was going to take the win of this race. Points today, we weren't sure he was going to get the championship, but he will get both as he comes out of the final corner and to the line. He wins round 8 in GTD, and he wins the championship as well. His teammate John Miller is going to come across the line in second, which I think is also enough for him to hold on to second in the championship. Zach Plummer has gotten past Ferris Stanley because Stanley is out of fuel and coasting. So Plummer will stand on the podium for the first time this championship as well, and will Stanley lose another spot? Tanaka is...
Well, Tanaka come in for a stop, so he's going to get past him here. Tanaka will get
Stanley's going to
through.
try and coast it to the line. Tanaka came in for that splash of fuel, and I think will be able to beat him off the final corner. And indeed, he will. So Tanaka will come through into fourth. Will Stanley even make it to the line before Hayden Gober?
Nope. There goes Gober.
Hayden Gober comes through as well. So Stanley goes from second in this race
to 7th.
Trying to limp across the line.
6th he finished. That's unfortunate for him. Definitely deserved a lot better than 6th, but it's just how it rolls sometimes. He did take that gamble, and he does cross the line, does he? Yes. Officially classified. What a race. What another phenomenal race we've had in this championship. Tyson Meyer, well done. Congratulations. Let's run through the race results.
So, our winner, and in dominant fashion, Tyson Meyer for Alpine Stars Geodesic Racing, the GTLM race winner and champion. Second place, Andrew Caron, and he had to fight hard for it with Dominic Olivier, who ends up in third. Great watching the battle between those guys. Fourth place goes to Simon Avital, and fifth is Trevor Clement. Robert L. Harris came into this round with a chance at the championship and came undone. He finishes in 6th, 12 laps down. We look to the GTD finishing order. Brian Lockwood takes the win 4 seconds ahead of his teammate in John Miller. Zach Plummer stands on the podium. A good race from him, and he picked up the scraps where they were at the end there. Fourth, Victor Tanaka, who had to take that splash of fuel, but it served him well, and he just stayed ahead of Hayden Gober in 5th place. Ferris Stanley lost almost a minute on that final lap, and he comes across the line with a limps it, coasts it across the line in 6th. 7th goes to David Browning, 1 lap down, and Jack Anderek, 1 lap down as well. Jesper Drilica, an early retirement in 9th, and Holder Stepanovsky did not take the start of the race.
We'll take a very, very quick break, and when we come back, we'll wrap up this championship, wrap up all the driver interviews, have a chat with all of our champions and race winners tonight. This has been the Geodesic GoPro Championship. We'll be back in just a moment.
iRacing, you wanted the best, you got them 4 abreast. Often imitated, never duplicated. The greatest show on dirt, the World of Outlaws.
Well, after 8 90-minute races in the Geodesic GoPro Championship, we know who our winners, our champions are in each division. And we'll go to not only today's race winner, but our GTLM champion, Tyson Meyer. In 1 second as I try and pull him in here. And indeed we have him.
Hello.
Our champion in GTLM. I mean, a good race from you, but obviously your thoughts go to the point standings where you are the winner.
Yeah, it was shaping up to be a great race to the end of the championship there. It's not the way you'd like to win the championship, having your competitor crash out. But those things happen. You got to take it. So I'll gladly take it.
And obviously, there was quite a bit of a split in the fuel strategy there between yourself and Robert Harris. He came in quite a bit earlier. Were you at all worried about he might be able to undercut you there, or was that a move of desperation on his behalf to try and combat the pace you had?
I wasn't sure what to think of it. I wasn't sure if he possibly had a potential slowdown, and if you're gonna pit, that's a great way to get rid of it. I was also thinking that with GT3 traffic coming up in a couple laps, maybe it'll work out better for him. I decided to stay out, and it worked out in my favor, thankfully.
Well, an awesome race from you here, and also an awesome run at that champion. You are the inaugural Geodesic GoPro champion, and I guess you get that prize pack.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'll thinking I got a few ideas, and can't wait to play with the new toy.
Are you going to have to pick up any extreme sports that aren't already in your repertoire?
Um, I was thinking of, just the casual stuff like skydiving and stuff. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do anything too crazy.
Well, I'll congratulate you once again and say well done on a race well run, a championship well won. While you're on SimSpeed TV and the iRacing Esports Network, who would you like to thank?
Well, I would like to thank Geodesic for getting this together, my team, um, and you guys for broadcasting it. SimSpeed has been great. Um, it's nice to see this broadcasted, and everybody that participated in the race. It was great. There wasn't too much conflicts or big issues. It was great sportsmanship throughout the whole season or the whole league. And of course, I'd like to thank GoPro and Alpine Stars and Asher Racing for providing me with the F64-USB, and then wheel rim. And then I also like to thank my wife Debbie for putting up with me doing all this racing. And I'd like to just thank all the people on my Twitch channel for putting up with me as well. So appreciate it.
Very, very welcome and great to chat with you. We'll move from our GTLM winner to our GTD champion and also race winner. And Brian Lockwood, I mean, you're the winner in the end, but for a long, long time in the race, it didn't look certain.
Oh, not at all. I'll tell you what, David, this is my home track in real life, but Sebring is one of my worst tracks on iRacing. So I was really not super excited about this race, but I just went into it, trying to finish the race, just do what I could to ensure that I won the championship, and I managed to do that.
I mean, talk to us about fuel, because Ferris Stanley raced you guys really, really hard all race long and then ran out on the final lap. Did you have to take a little bit of buffer margin with your fueling in the pit stops? What went on from your perspective from there? Obviously, you guys are running different makes of car, but drama on the final lap there with your competitor running out of fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. Both John and I did take a little bit of a buffer, and that ended up paying off greatly in the end. I guess because it was very close whether or not we were going to get that extra lap. So I guess Ferris decided to risk it, and he had a crazy fast pit stop. It almost paid off for him, but we did get the extra lap, and luckily for John, he was able to get that spot back.
We started this race just before sunset, and sunset during the race, and we finished into all of that darkness. What's that like from behind the cockpit when the light changes so significantly around the circuit? You start with the sunlight, and then by the end, all of the reflectors around the circuit illuminated by your headlights.
Oh, it was so difficult, especially at a track like Sebring, which is so difficult anyway, and there's so few reference points. When light went to dark, everybody started making more mistakes. You could see it. I don't think I've ever won a race that I made that many mistakes, but that's just the way it was going. It wasn't helping also that I was having some wheel issues during warm up, and I actually barely got it fixed before qualifying. So I usually run IRFFB for better force feedback, but I switched off IRFFB for qualifying. I didn't have any practice on it. So the car was totally weird. It felt totally weird. And as the tires went off at night where I couldn't see where the bumps were, it was really, really tough to keep the car straight and just bring the car home. So definitely glad I didn't have too much pressure at the end there because that would have been so tough.
Well, you keep your perfect record of winning every race you've attended, and that is enough to make you the Geodesic GoPro Championship GTD winner.
Yes.
I know you've put in quite a lot of effort yourself, your teammates at Racecraft Esports into this particular series, and how does that make you feel? Your emotions, I guess, at the end of this championship.
Oh, amazing. At the end of the race, it was more relief, but overall, I'm so excited to win the first season of the Geodesic GoPro Geodesic Championship. Um, I mean, I'm just really, really glad that we could pull it off. And a 1-2 for Racecraft Esports. Really, really proud of John for making it through in second at the end. Ferris took advantage of a couple of the races that I wasn't here and really made those points difficult. But hey, John got it in the end. So I'm just so proud of him. He drove an awesome race today. And yeah, I mean, it's just an awesome feeling. We're so happy all this work we put in paid off.
As the season champion, you do get that prize pack, including the Hero 7 Black with action kit. Did you have a need for an action camera in your life, or is that just a little bit of a bonus to being champion?
Oh, absolutely, I need it. That thing is going straight on my race car. We're gonna use it as a rear view camera in real life.
Well, you also, I believe, get $50 as the round winner as well. So all your Christmases at once here in October.
Well, actually, I don't think I'm gonna get those $50. In the briefing, they told us that it was gonna be for the lowest amount of incidents. And while I had the second lowest, I think Hayden Grover had the lowest in GTD. So if he does get it, congratulations to him. If I do get it, awesome. Uh, that's just the cherry on top.
Well, congratulations to you once again. Anyone you would like to thank, not only thinking about this race, but of course, at this point, I'm sure you're thinking about the championship as well.
Yeah, absolutely. First, thanks to Geodesic for putting this on. We really enjoyed running it. It was great for the team to have something to look forward to every other week. Thank you to Victor, Gabrielle, joining the team mid-season, helping us out in the races, and of course in preparation. And a special thank you to Luca Crisafi, who helped with some of the fuel calculations. Kane Halliburton, who was in practices, even though he wasn't racing, he was in practices tuning the setup and pushing us forward, helping us with driving. And Marco Nermella, who jumped in and helped with the setup a couple times. So all of you made this possible. Thank you.
And lastly, I think I know, but tell the people what's next for Racecraft Esports.
What's next for Racecraft Esports? Well, you can look for us in the TCR class of the old Neo Endurance series, the new 24-hour series esports. We're hoping we finish fourth in pre-qualifying in that series, and it's a super, super competitive class. So there's going to be some awesome racing, and hopefully we can have as much success there as we've had here.
There we go. Thank you, Brian Lockwood, GTD champion. We'll move on now. Second place in GTD in today's race was John Miller, and you led plenty of laps. In the end, second place. And I mean, talk us through the race just from your seat, because there were plenty of lead changes, plenty of strategy, lots of racing.
Well, I mean, it certainly felt pretty good going in. Took pole and was setting a good pace early on. Brian had gotten around Ferris pretty early, so he was between us. Obviously, Ferris I needed to finish ahead of. Brian didn't necessarily need to beat me, so we were in a good position as a team. And the race went well. I felt like I had a really good pace, and then my tires started to drop off a little bit, and then Ferris really picked up a lot of time in the pits, and we were kind of thinking he may have underfueled just because of how much time he took or how much time he gained. So that was in the back of our mind as well, and we just wanted to keep running consistent laps. I made a couple of mistakes, and Ferris got close. The incident into turn one, to me, he didn't have any overlap. I was trying to protect a little bit as well, and probably turned in earlier than I had on other laps, so that may have thrown him off a little bit as well. So, it was race control deemed that as a racing incident. So, we'll go with what they say. They've done a great job all year. That incident allowed Brian to actually get around Ferris and kind of take the lead. And towards the end, it kind of came to fruition what we thought. Ferris underfueled, and I was able to squeak by him and take second, which is my comfortable spot for the year.
And I'm sure you have as much of an idea as I do about this. That would mean that you and Brian Lockwood have locked out first and second in the championship standings at the end there. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yep. And that's that was kind of our goal going in, and took a lot of work, and obviously Brian has been so dominant all year. So regardless of the outcome tonight, he deserved to win the championship. But he did what he always does, and he found a way to win. So very proud of Brian, very proud of our team, and proud of myself for being able to hang in there and come away with a 1-2 for Racecraft Esports.
Sounds like the result you were looking for. Hearing that there will be potentially another season of this championship again in the future, how many Racecraft Esports cars might we expect to see on the grid for that?
Well, no, that's something we'll talk about internally, and obviously we'll try to field a couple, and if we can get 3 or 4, then the more the merrier. It's a great series. Everyone has done a good job. You guys have done a great job with the broadcast, so no reason we wouldn't want to come back for season 2.
Thanks so much for stopping in and having a word. From second in GTD, we'll move to second in GTLM. And Andrew Karen, with that result, you also grabbed third in the championship.
Oh, wow. I didn't think I would. Well, I knew I had to be ahead of Olivier, and I think it was. Oh, I'm sorry.
Enzo Johansson?
Oh, yeah, exactly. So I didn't think I would. I knew it was for P3, but from the start, I had a pretty bad start from my eyes. I think so. It was getting pretty stressful because I had so much time to gain.
From where we were watching, it looked like you had a lot of pace. The car was quick, but the stability was maybe difficult, and we saw quite a couple of slides, some tiny little spins. But when you had a clean lap, it was really quick. Struggling with the balance of the car in these cool conditions. What was going on?
Well, I had to do a setup from scratch, and I'm not that good in setup, so that's one of the part of this. And also, I seem to struggle with the more weight on the M8 since the start of this season. I don't know if it's because I've driven the M8 for such a long time since it got out, but it seems I developed some bad habits, I would say, and doesn't seems to work out when the tires are pretty cold.
Well, you stand on the podium in this race, and you finish in the top 3 of the championship, for which I suspect you must be reasonably happy with. Anyone you'd like to thank from behalf of yourself and also your team, RSR Esports?
Oh yeah, I would like to thanks everybody at SimSpeed for commentating this league for the old season. Also, all the sponsor and the Geodesic team for organizing everything for this season. It was really fun, and I will also like to thank all my teammates and the RSR teams. They've been really supportive for when I'm racing, and they're really great guys. They're really good to be around.
Well, congratulations. Thanks so much. And we'll
Thank you.
hopefully see you again sometime. Try and rush through the last of a couple of the drivers here that we want to have a word with as we wrap up our coverage of this fantastic season that we've had. I think I've got Dominic Olivier here, who finished third in GTLM. Or maybe I don't.
Hi, yes, Dominic.
Well, third for you in this race, and a tough one, I think. But are you still happy to stand on the podium?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a lot of fun. Had to put on a show there at the end and try and defend against Andrew. He drove well, and my one mistake was pretty costly. But it was good fun.
Well, obviously not a lot of grip out in the dirt on the exit of turn one. Your feeling of how that happened, did you just dive it into the corner a bit too hot trying to defend?
Not necessarily. I got thrown off a bit from the GT3 that we were passing, and yeah, it just caught me off guard, and done that corner 1,000 times, and just got back on the throttle a little bit too early when I saw him go left to take the inside, and yeah, it really caught me off guard. It caught me sleeping there.
Well, we get to the end of the championship, and how would you rate your performance over the 8 races we've had?
It's been I had big ambitions in the beginning, and the season started okay for me, but I had a big shunt at Road Atlanta, and a one race absence and a ban. So everything kind of fell through. But yeah, I was really looking forward to battling with Robert and Tyson and the other guys. It was a close championship, at least in the start. Shame to see Robert go out like that, but well done to Tyson for bringing it home. He really drove well. He's a pretty solid racer, and yeah, maybe next season I'll be able to be up there and show some pace.
I do wish you the best of luck and hope you return for next season, and I'm definitely looking forward to that one. We're going to wrap up coverage here with one last person who's got a couple of things to say from the perspective of one of our race administrators.
Hey guys, you got me?
Yep, do you have a copy?
Yep. Hey David. Hey Jay. I want to thank SimSpeed first. When we were sitting down and we wanted to do this league and designing everything, we wanted to pick the most passionate people that we thought were out there to do coverage, and we thought that was you guys. And we also really appreciate the fact that you guys get up super early to do this venture, your first one in the United States time zone. So thank you guys. And I know Reese isn't here, but thank you to Reese and the rest of the SimSpeed team.
And Corey Roon, obviously you've been not driving in this series, but from Geodesic very much involved in its administration, its promotion, all those sort of things. And I guess as much as the drivers learn, we learn and you learn something as well.
Yeah, for sure. I've been around automotive racing for a long time, particularly in myself. So what we really wanted to do was have a league that represented what a lot of real life guys that do it, club racing or chump car type of things, which I know you do, David. And bringing that into a league. And so we researched a lot of the other great leagues that are out there that have already made names for themselves for several years. And we kind of followed some of the things from each leagues that we thought were good to put this show on for everyone and bring some of these new sponsors into this world. But yeah, the learning curve, it's been big. There's been a ton of work into this. I want to thank Carlos, who you guys had on earlier, Vila. He really spearheaded this for us. Miguel Vigo as well. They're here every night for race control. That was a big thing. We wanted live stewards to give the guys the best opportunity to have good, clean, fun, hard racing. And I think we've seen that pretty much every round. So big thanks to those guys for doing this, and the rest of our team that have volunteered, in race control, several of them, as well as all of the artwork and background that went into this, to make this happen. We've got a great group of drivers and admin people, so we're very fortunate, and this has been terrific. I just want to thank everyone. We've had a great time doing this, and really look forward to the next rounds.
Well, thank you so much. I think I'll speak for Fonty and Jay as well, and thanking you for putting on a fantastic championship. And then, lastly, what can we expect? Season 2?
Definitely. I'm working on securing some additional sponsors into additional seasons. Also, potentially more than one league. So we know that people on the European time zones, this is a really difficult time slot for them. So we wanted to test the U.S. markets, and a lot of our backing came from the U.S. So it made sense to do it that way first. So obviously we want to carry on now and continue with different time zones to give other guys a chance and bring the same type of competition and the same type of prizes to each league we do. And we want SimSpeed to be there too.
There we go. Awesome to hear from you. A championship that was being very, very exciting came down to the line, and the last lap in some cases in both of our divisions. It's great to watch. It's great to broadcast. From all of us here on SimSpeed TV, thank you everyone who's tuned in, all the people around the world who've followed this and kept up to date and watched on the iRacing Esports Network. From all of us, good night and goodbye.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction. He's going around the outside of both of them. Maloney.
Oh, he's taking Anderson. Anderson's up to him.
Oh my God.
Big crash. Oh my goodness, half the field's going to get rolled.
It's very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go. Oh no. That's massive. This is it. This is over. I can't believe this. Oh my God.
God, what?